All right, I think we are live. So welcome everyone to another Maran Motoring live stream here. I hope you guys are all having a great weekend. Thanks so much for joining in here. And so, like all the other usual live streams, we're going to go for about 2 hours. We're going to just cover all of the questions there, and anyone who is a member gets priority answering, as well as anyone who does the super chats. I see we already have one super chat, so thanks Squishy Shaft for starting us off here and asking how's it going. It's going great. We went to the zoo today and had a fun weekend, so I hope you guys all had a fun weekend as well. But anyway, yeah, that's about it. Hope you guys all are able to join in here. Let me see. We got a decent amount of people here so far. So welcome to not only Squishy Shaft, but also Rondo and Trucking Car Guy, Kyle, Vishal, Wheatman, Taste Bud, and Kevin. Thanks all of you for joining. Rafi, thanks for joining in as well. And let me make sure this is level. Going a little crazy there. All right. I think hopefully that's good. So anyway, yeah, thanks so much once again, Squishy Shaft for the for the super chat there, and I love the name as well. And let me see. So first question here. We'll just go. Vishal says, "Hey Matt, do you think Toyota should discontinue the Venza and turn the regular Highlander into a two-row? I feel that makes more sense as a Venza isn't bigger than the RAV4." Yeah, they were definitely weird with the way they did the Venza. Everyone was expecting it to be bigger or be a short version of the Highlander, just basically Honda Pilot, Honda Passport, take that same formula. That's what everyone was expecting, and we didn't get that. So I'm not sure what they're planning on doing, if they're going to do a next generation Venza or if it was just kind of a fun experiment or what. So, I mean, as far as should they discontinue it, I mean, I think there's still a place for a larger mid-sized SUV that is two rows. And I get what you're saying about the Highlander. Toyota, whenever I ask them about where Highlander fits in with Grand Highlander now, they're corporate executives basically said that, Highlander still has a place because of the lower trims. Because with the Grand Highlander, it starts at XLE. And so that's great if you're willing to spend, mid to high 40s, great, get yourself a Grand Highlander. But really the key demographic now for regular Highlander is going to be people who want to go for the lower trims, or people who just actually don't really need the third row that much, or don't need as big of a third row as the Grand Highlander. You can save a few bucks going for the regular Highlander there. But it's really like they were telling me, like, if someone can't go up to a Grand Highlander XLE, you still have the L and the LE, I believe, for the regular Highlander. And that's something that is exclusive to the Highlander that the Grand Highlander doesn't get. So that's kind of the angle there for that. But I see what you mean. I mean, it would make sense to have something large that's actually two rows. Now, I guess you could argue that they do with the Land Cruiser, but that's way more expensive. So, it'd be good to see something that's more just, street friendly for sure. I see we have everyone else saying hello. Thanks for joining in. Steve says, haven't been to Pittsburgh Zoo in a long time. Yeah, it's actually a really nice zoo. And my parents hadn't been there in a while, and they were impressed with it as well. And it's a nice zoo. It's not the most amazing, but, for something that's, fairly close, it does the job. And, is a cool way to see the animals. I think they do a really good job, though. I think it's a better zoo than some people give it credit for. And let me see. So Daniel says, how's that beautiful Bullitt? It's doing well, sitting in the garage. And I may actually I'm going to have another press car this week, but then I may actually have a gap of at least a month with no press cars, which I'm actually excited about. I love having the press cars. It's nice and easy having them dropped off in the driveway every week. But I'm excited because, for one, I'm going to have like an entire month potentially here to just drive the Bullitt as a daily driver. What a crazy concept. But it's something I get to do like 1 or 2 times a year, to actually have a couple of weeks where I can just drive it and treat it like a regular car. And then it's also going to be nice because that'll open up some free time for me to go out on the road in the Bullitt and film some reviews of some of the cars that some of you offered me that I'm hopefully going to be able to line up here in October, most likely. So very excited for all that. It's going to be a fun month, hopefully. And I may actually hopefully will definitely by October have new tires on the Bullitt as well. And I'm working on that. And that's something that I'll be doing a little video on, of why I chose what I chose and all that. Haven't finalized everything, but I'm pretty certain on what I'll be going for here. But and Trucking Car Guy says, so what are the lower income folks going to drive now that the Altima may be discontinued? Well, there's still other things, we'll have to see, I think they're still going to keep Sentra around. So honestly, I think that's, obviously more affordable than Altima. So I think, people that, want something cheap can still get a Sentra, and the Sentra is great. I actually think the Sentra is like one of the most underappreciated vehicles in the compact sedan segment. It's actually really nice and plush, good tech, plenty of power and performance, looks good in my opinion. Honestly, I'm surprised the Sentra hasn't been a bigger hit, especially now with how expensive Civic is, especially, and the fact that Corolla is a little more dated. I think the Sentra interior is way nicer. So yeah, I don't know. I think Nissan still has some stuff that I think is actually good. I know a lot of people, myself included, love to be like, "Oh, what is Nissan doing?" But I think there are still some vehicles they don't get enough credit for as well. So I'm very unbiased. I'm willing to give credit where credit's due, and also bash where bashing is due. So, but yeah, hopefully, I mean, we'll see. We got a couple years for the Ultimate, it sounds like, so it's nothing happening too soon. But yeah. Marco says, "Hey, what's up, Matt? Just saw you're online." Paul as well. Thanks for joining in, Marco. 2 says, "Hey, Matt, Ultima might be gone, but Big Ultimate Energy will still be around." Yeah, that's right. Big Ultimate Energy will last forever. It's never going away. Kind of like Vin Diesel. It just, forever have family and Fast and Furious movies until they literally can't make them anymore. And Brian, thanks for joining in. He says, "Good evening." Trent Car Guy says, "I'll try to email you about the Magnum." Sounds good. If it is ready to go, yeah, give me an update on how that's going for you there in an email, and hopefully we can set something up, either this year or next year, whatever. We'll have to see. I'm going to mostly focus on stuff that's relatively close to me. So I'm not spending a fortune on gas, since gas is expensive, especially for premium, which the Bullitt doesn't require technically. But if I want the most horsepower, which of course I want the most horsepower, you got to put the premium gas in it. So yeah, it'll be expensive fill-ups here whenever I do these reviews on the road, but it'll be worth it for the fun. And Marco says, "I probably won't be saying much since I'm making my way back to California from Nebraska." Wow, I'm currently in Denver, but don't worry, I'm just listening, not watching. Sounds good, but thanks for joining in, Marco. That's a fun idea to be listening on a road trip. It's like a live podcast almost. It's cool. Thanks for joining in. Safe travels as well, and that's gonna be a fun adventure. I've always wanted to do a cross country road trip. I've never driven cross country before, and I had opportunities too. I have a friend that's in the military, and he's done some cross country moves, and I've always wanted to join him on one of those and help them out, and it'd be fun because he's like my best friend. But I just never been like, "Oh yeah, I have a week to do nothing and just go cross country." But hopefully someday, that's still on my bucket list, is to do a cross country thing, preferably in the Bullitt. That would be the ultimate way. Drive from Pittsburgh, go straight to San Francisco, go on all the chase routes from the movie Bullitt. I think that would be like a dream trip, but we'll see if I ever have enough time to do that. Jay says, "Hey, Matt, great to see you again. How are you and your family? Always like to check how everyone is." Thanks, Jay. I really appreciate it. We're doing great. Thanks for joining in, for asking. Hope you and all your loved ones are doing well too. And yeah, just had a great weekend here. Went to the zoo today, and always great spending quality time with the family. Raphael says, "I was always the Corolla driver, but my friend always preferred his Sentras. I think he bought 4 in a row." Yeah, they're great. I mean, the thing about Sentras, obviously, if you want something that is going to last the longest, I don't think it's my top pick. Obviously, Corolla and Civic are probably going to be the better way to go if you're going to drive it into the ground. But I think Sentras still seem to do pretty well from what I've seen. And the CVT is the only thing. But at least with that CVT, it's only having to deal with like 150 horsepower, so you're not asking a whole lot of it. So hopefully they hold up decently well, but I'm not sure. But that's the only Achilles heel of those things, is those CVTs. Mike says, "Just saw Honda significantly raise the prices on the 24 Civic, Accord, and CR-V, pricing themselves a good bit ahead of the Koreans, even a little bit more than Toyota, it seems now." Yeah, I mean, Honda's kind of been the more premium thing recently, and I'm not sure why. I'm not sure how they think they can get away with being more. I mean, I think that Civic, Accord, and CR-V do drive better in most cases than basically all the competitors. Honda does a fantastic job with all the driver inputs for sure. But, an Accord is very competitive. I think Accord is great as long as you don't need satellite radio, because that's the weird thing that they excluded from Accord. Civic is fantastic. I mean, they are my favorites in this segment. Well, not CRV, but the others are my favorites in the segment, especially if you don't mind the higher prices. But the CRV, there is no justification for that, because CRV has no cooled seats, no panoramic roof, heated steering wheel is only on the top, absolute top trim. But I mean, it's just like the fact you can't get cooled seats in a CRV is just insane to me. And all the others do that for less. And now if the CRV is going to be even more expensive, it's going to get harder and harder to justify CRVs. I like it. It's fine if you don't care about all that stuff, but it just seems like you're getting ripped off in some cases because you get all that stuff in the competition for now even more less money than before. So I actually hadn't seen the price increases for the 24s. So thanks for bringing that to my attention, Mike. I'll have to look into that. But yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll see where the limit is with all this stuff. But I think this kind of stuff is what's driving everyone to the used market. Because everyone's like, sorry, I can't spend 30 grand on a Civic. I'm going to go to the used market. It's just, it's crazy. Rafi says, I had a Sentra for a rental, and honestly, it's pretty nice. I was surprised. I'm glad some of you agree with me as well. Yeah, I'm glad that it's made a good impression on others as well, and it's not just me. Mike says, I'm just surprised by the 24 pricing. It went up even more than Toyota's increased pricing. Yeah. I mean, I would say that in a lot of cases, they have a nicer vehicle than the Toyotas, which are a little more dated. CRV's fresher than RAV4, Civic's fresher than Corolla. They have some advantages there, but again, like I said, they're still lacking compared to RAV4 with the features they offer and stuff. So, I'm also seeing, just before I get to the member questions, Blown 9646 says Honda CVTs are junk too. I don't agree with that. I mean, maybe there's some that are bad, but I always follow, I feel like I give them a shout out almost every time I'm on a live stream here. The Mileage Impossible Facebook page, there's been a couple of Hondas, even the newer ones here, that are very high mileage on the original CVTs. And there was even a new, like 2022 Civic Touring with the 1.5T and the CVT that was a medical courier's vehicle that already had like 250,000 miles on it, which is like truly unbelievable. I don't know how you log that many miles in like what was essentially a year or two. But anyway, it made it that high of mileage already and didn't have any issues. Now, obviously, age plays a factor in addition to mileage, but just goes to show they do hold up for high miles if you do the maintenance, it seems. But Jay says, my mind is all over the place with cars now. Kind of tired of having a garage queen in my Type R. Thinking of WRX, but still wanting an 86 when the R is paid off, but I'm only almost halfway through payments. Yeah. The thing is, yeah, I would just hold on to stuff. Again, like I've said in the past, I don't think anyone should buy a car right now unless they can pay cash, because you're just going to get, unless there's an incentivized rate or somehow you're able to get a respectable interest rate. But I mean, all these interest rates, anything over 5% is insane. And I would just say no and just like hold on to whatever you have, fix it, run it into the ground, whatever you need to do. But I feel like it's just not a good time to buy cars right now, again, unless you're paying cash or if you're leasing. There's some lease deals out there that are still pretty solid. But as far as finance rates, forget it. It's just like, it's all crap. Jay also says, since the Minnesota winters kind of bother me, yeah, I'm sure that's got to be tough driving through Minnesota winter. Kyle says, I wish Nissan kept a turbo model for the newest Sentra introduced a few years ago. A Nismo model would have been a nice model for this generation. I agree. And I think the platform actually had some decent potential to it. And they could have even phoned it in. I wouldn't have been mad if they just put the VC turbo motor from the upper Altima, toss that in there. I don't know if it fits in the engine bay, but I don't think it would be that hard to, shoehorn it in there and, make it fit. And we know the CVT works. Just basically rip all the stuff out of the Altima, toss it into the smaller Sentra, and you'd have a really fun car. It's not hard. Again, I'm sure there's extra complexity behind the scenes. And again, I'm going to try and refrain from always being an armchair product planner here. But, it just seems like one of those things that, yeah, they could have just added some extra appeal. And that would have helped the regular Sentra. What a lot of these companies, I feel like, used to always do and don't do as much anymore is have halo products that, yes, they're going to lose money. And yes, they might not sell a ton of them, but they get people in the showroom. And, Dodge was famous. I think this is part of why Dodge's success is as high as it is, because it's not just that they did the Hellcats, but it's because they offered the cool looking stuff on V6 Chargers and Challengers. That's the key. That's the volume thing there. And so it's the same thing. If they would have had a Nismo Sentra that actually had all the power and stuff, and you sell a few thousand of those to the people that actually want them, and then you make a Nismo appearance package, and you tell people, oh yeah, for people who don't need more than 150 horsepower, but you like the cool looks, or they just were like, oh, I saw a commercial about the cool new Nismo Sentra, I'm going to go in and check it out. And they're like, oh, the Nismo Sentra is $35,000 or whatever it would end up being. And people are like, oh, forget that. But we have a nice Sentra here for 23 grand with an appearance package, sold. And I really think that's how Dodge, became one of the sales leaders over the years as far as the muscle car segment goes. And that's the stuff that like Chevy overlooked. Chevy's, they're obsessed with, hey, let's make a sports car, which is amazing. And all of us journalists love it. And all the diehard car enthusiasts love it. But the average person, they're like, oh, I can't see out of this. And it's too hardcore. And I think being soft, being big, and also offering the cool stuff is really, I think the way, it works for a lot of people. Even Beth just texted me and said she likes appearance packages as well. And I think a lot of people do. And we're seeing more and more of that. But I think that's something that Nissan hasn't really cashed in on, unfortunately, for whatever reason. Sumi the Great, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, hey, Matt, my first stream of yours. Thanks for joining for the first one here. He says, what was your reaction when the new Mustang EcoBoost wasn't going to be paired with a manual? As a 2012 Mustang V6 manual owner, I was kind of sad. Yeah, that's an interesting choice. I think my first thought whenever I heard that was like, oh, well, they're going to save the manual for a special edition. I think and I've mentioned this in the past, it seems like they're leaning into the Fox body thing a little bit with this new generation. And so my guess is Mustang SVO will come back as a slightly boosted EcoBoost with a manual. And that will be the way to get the manual for some people. There's also potential they could just do like a higher performance package or something like that to bring back the manual, because we know the parts are there, right? It's the same carryover stuff from the S550. So it's very easy to do. It's on the parts shelf. It's still in production with the GTs. With the MT82, it's the same one they use on the EcoBoost. And so, the pieces are there, they're waiting. And so I would guess that that's going to happen. I don't think the manual's gone for good from the EcoBoost unless the take rate was just so crappy that just didn't make sense. But I still think they could justify, a small run of SVOs or something like that, just for people who want it for that new generation. Get them out there and then, kill it off again. I don't know. But it's a bummer for sure. Cause I think it also, if they leave it automatic only, then I think they're kind of underselling the EcoBoost. The EcoBoost is a really solid platform. It's a great entry level Mustang. And a lot of those people that are getting into Mustangs still want a manual, and forcing them into a V8, which might be overkill for a lot of them, is just not smart in my opinion. And yes, you're going to have the average, Florida convertible rental, person who just wants the automatic. And there's, I'm sure, an enormous majority of EcoBoosts that are automatics, and that's all those people want. But I feel like there was a decent take rate, at least for the last generation, for the manual. So I'm not convinced it's gone for good. But if it is, then it kind of it's basically for just like throwing in the towel on the EcoBoost and being like, oh yeah, well, we'll just, phone this one in and just consign it to rental fleets and people who just, want a comfy cruiser and like not take it seriously, even though it is improved for the EcoBoost and it's got some really nice enhancements for the S650 here. But yeah, it'd be a bummer if they just left it automatic only. The automatic's fine, but it's, the 10-speed. I haven't driven the new one, so I can't say. I still can't get my hands on one. By the way, if any of you out there have orders or have 2024 Mustangs and you're anywhere remotely close to Pittsburgh, please send me an email so I can try and maybe get one reviewed, because I can confirm, based on what I know about my schedule for the rest of the year here as far as press vehicles and stuff, I will absolutely, as of right now, definitely not have a 2024 Mustang review this year at all. And then we have winters here in Pittsburgh, and they're not going to send it in the middle of winter. So it's basically guaranteed now that unless someone offers me their personal 2024 Mustang, or I find a dealer that has one that I want to review and is a dealer I actually want to work with, if I can line something like that up, I'll have something this fall. But otherwise, it's looking like it's not going to be till at least spring or summer next year before I ever even get a chance to drive the new Mustang, unfortunately. So we'll see. Anyway, long-winded answer, but thank you so much for the super chat. And yeah, I'm definitely sad as well, right there with you. Let me get back to the member questions here. So let me see, where was I? Murphy says, Jay, I've been thinking the same thing. I want an 86 as soon as my FK8 is paid off, 76,000 miles and counting. SLMD Sedan says, what's up, Matt? How are you doing? Doing well. I had a great weekend. Hope you had a good one too. Marco says, yeah, I feel you on the free time. When I was younger, I had all the time in the world. We're moving, so it's not a pleasure trip, but it's so darn beautiful through the I-76. That's great. That's awesome. And, yes, I'm glad you're able to still enjoy it, even if it's, not a fun trip. But yeah, the free time thing, it's something I guess that afflicts all of us, especially if you have, wives, girlfriends, kids, all that kind of stuff. It's definitely can sometimes take some time away there. And SMD Sedan says, hey Matt, I'm wondering what are your thoughts on the M340i or the B58 engine in general? I love the B58. I mean, that's the one in the Supra, right? I mean, so that's a great motor. It's so underrated. It's such a strong motor. It's so good. I've never driven an M340i though. Unfortunately, I've never had a chance to. BMW doesn't work with me. Never had anyone offer me one, and never came across one from the dealers that I work with. I could hunt one down and try and forge a new relationship with a BMW dealership or something, because I know that's a blind spot. And I know the M340i is probably one of the most requested cars I've had people ask me to review, and I desperately want to review one. So it will happen. Hopefully someday I'll track one down. But I've never driven the current generation 3 Series at all, so I can't give any opinion on it whatsoever, unfortunately. The other thing I can say that's closest to it is I've driven the new M2 now, thankfully, thanks to another member as well, Justin. So that's the closest reference I can give you as far as my thoughts on a modern M car, but that's the only one, unfortunately. Mike says truck prices are also insane. I know everyone knows. I'm very curious when the entire car market flips and vehicle prices stay stable for years or plummet. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how things play out. I still think that whenever all the student loans start kicking in here in October, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to get way tighter with their finances, and people are already behind. I mean, repos are up like I think they're past 8% or something now. It's like a very high percentage of repos, like way higher than we've had in a long time. And it just seems like it's getting worse. So, that could potentially, I mean, there'll be some repos on the market, so that could help level out used car prices a little bit. But yeah, it's just people are biting off more than they can chew. And all of these average transaction prices going through the roof for new cars, I mean, means those people are not going to be able to keep those new cars once, all these other things start kicking in. Because people are very short-sighted, and people, even with gas prices, like gas prices were super high around this time last year, and then they dropped, and everyone's like, oh, I'm going to go back into SUVs and stuff. And then here we go again, gas prices shooting up again. And then everyone's like, oh no, I got to run back to the hybrids. And now hybrids are having this boom again. And it's just so funny how American consumers run to the most expensive gas guzzling thing they can possibly get their hands on the second that things are even looking slightly up. And then they end up getting burned over and over again and still don't seem to learn. Trent Car Guy says Dodge was also one of the very few to offer a V8 with all-wheel drive. True, and that was really cool when they did for a little bit there. Kevin, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, I want to purchase a TRD Camry. How is the ride? A ride's actually really good. I think they did a good job with the TRD Camry of not going overboard. It's not as stiff as like an Apex Edition Corolla. Those they went a little overboard on. I think it's a really nice blend. And I don't know if you see a lot of them where you're at, Kevin, but at least in my area here, I see a good amount of TRD Camrys. They seem very popular. Surprisingly, they seem to be really popular with especially younger demographics. I see like a lot of like high schoolers and like young looking people driving Camry TRDs a lot. And I think it's just that combination of, it's a Camry. It's not too bad as far as insurance rates and things like that for younger drivers, especially. It sounds good. It's got a nice exhaust. It's got a V6, good old school kind of stuff. It's got enough space to haul your friends around in and all that. And it's reliable. So it's not going to burn you. It's got good resale. It's kind of a really good thing all around. So yeah, I think TRD Camry is a good choice. Ride should be great. Definitely try and test drive one, of course, if you can. Don't just take my word for it. But I think that it's really well done as far as suspension goes. And thank you so much for the super chat there. Getting back to the other member questions here. SMD says, what would you say prevents American companies to offer some amenities like heated and cooled seats and panoramic sunroofs, like some Asian car companies at lower costs? I mean, I feel like most of them do. I mean, the panoramic roof is maybe something that's a little more rare, but I mean, most of the American cars do offer that stuff. I think maybe Malibu doesn't. But and obviously Ford's out of the sedan game and all that. But even with the SUVs, I feel like they're pretty well matched, unless there's something you're referencing specifically. But even like Mustangs had them way back in the 2015 model year. You could get cooled seats, which I think was kind of early days, and that's something that I think Challenger and Camaro didn't catch up on, for a couple of years after that. But Marco says, am I crazy or is the wide body Mustang really dope? If I play my cards right, I could potentially be in a position to get one in less than 10 years. I know it's a long plan, but still. I'm not sure which wide body Mustang you're talking about. There's a lot of cool wide body kits there. But yeah, there's all kinds of, that's the great thing about the Mustang community. You can customize them in a million different ways and make it exactly what you want. It's a great canvas to, really express yourself. And Trenton Car Guy says, keep at it, Marco, and then you can make it happen. Yeah, definitely. Anything's possible. It's, it's one of those things. Hopefully the hard work pays off. Hard work doesn't always pay off, but hopefully, it will, and you can get to a point where you can get one of those. The good thing about Mustangs, especially if you're not going for a special version, they depreciate. They will eventually, get to wherever you're at, money wise, to, make it a possibility, and hopefully you can make that happen at some point. And SMDL says, people in my area in SoCal stance out Mustangs and slam them to the floor. Yeah, that's definitely a popular thing these days, especially. Austin says, hey, Matt, happy Sunday. Saw the 2024 Mustang in person today at a car meet. Looks better than the pictures, but I still wish they had done more with the platform for an all-new generation. Totally agree. And I actually just this past week when I was driving to Baltimore to drive the Kona, which will be posted up here this next week, I saw an entire car carrier full of 2024 Mustangs, and that was actually my first time seeing one out in the open as well. And obviously they're on car carriers and they're a little dirty and stuff, but they actually, I think they do look really good. And I don't have anything against the exterior styling personally. I never really did. I was a little underwhelmed, whenever they first came out, but as time has gone on a little bit here, I think it's a solid evolution. And I think they look really nice. I still don't like the interior, but it is what it is. But I think it's going to be a nice improvement for a lot of people. And I see Jillian Gallo is asked a question here. They got a family member in here, so I'm going to take a second to answer this. She says, best advice for buying new tires. Do I need to splurge for my Subaru or just go basic as I can within reason? Great question. I think with tires, it's going to come down to, there's a few things you want to look at with tires. You want to look at, what is the wear rating? Because some of these cheaper tires, they wear out really fast. So it's like you look like you're saving money in the beginning, but then they're crap tires. They only last you 20,000 miles, and you got to replace them a bunch anyway. So you don't end up actually saving much money. So sometimes, going for those name brand ones that have the higher tread rating, have the better warranty, the better reputation, are going to be worthwhile just from a cost standpoint. And the other component with tires, you don't want to go cheap on because of safety. A lot of them, they cut corners. There's a reason why, obviously, everything's cheaper for a reason. And so with tires, that's one thing you don't want to mess with going too cheap on. I mean, you can get away with, you don't have to get the most expensive tire out there, but you want to make sure you find one that is safe. Especially if you deal with inclement weather. I know that where you're at right now in Texas is probably not too bad, but if you do happen to move somewhere where you're encountering snow or even rain, there's some tires that really hydroplane really badly and they're just not designed well. So my favorite website is Tire Rack. I always go on there. They've been great. I've ordered tires from them over the years. They have really good reviews. And so you can just plug in your car on Tire Rack and it'll say, okay, here's the sizes you need. Here's the tires that are offered. You can, sort through them based on, any kind of criteria, and then go and click on the tire and click on the reviews. And there's actual real people that are like, I got this many miles out of them. I got, this kind of wear out of them. They're good, they're bad, they're noisy. They're not noisy. There's a whole variety, and they actually have different metrics. Are these ones good in snow? And you can say, well, I'm never going to drive in snow, so I will go and pick one that maybe isn't quite as good in the snow, but is better in other areas, and find the one that fits you and your budget and all that, well. And so I'd say don't go super cheap, but you don't have to spend a ton of money either. And there's some really solid stuff, and none of this is sponsored, by the way. I wish it was, but there's some really good, like, cheaper tires. Way back when, I used to run Sumitomos on my Subarus. And those are kind of a lower price tire, but they were really solid. They worked great for a long time. But some of the higher price stuff also, if you can get a good deal on them, there's some good, every once in a while they run specials and stuff like that to, bring the prices down. But I would just say buy through Tire Rack or something like that, because those, you're going to have the best. They just ship them to your house, or they can ship them to an install center, but it's a little bit better because sometimes you go to a tire shop, sometimes they run deals, or, like Sam's Club and things like that will run deals. But typically I feel like you pay a little bit more at the actual shop because they know they have you and you want to buy tires right there, right then. versus being able to kind of shop around online. So hopefully that helps give you a little bit of advice there on tires. But tires are, I mean, that's the part of your car that's connected to the road. So that is the one thing, that is really, really important. A lot of other things you can probably go cheaper on, but tires, I would make sure, you get a good quality set of tires, because that's what you need to stop. Other tires that are crappier, they have longer stopping distances, and that could be the difference between you rear-ending someone and not rear-ending someone, or spinning out and hydroplaning and not spinning out and hydroplaning. So it's one of those things you definitely want to make sure you got a good quality tire. So hopefully that helps. If you have any other follow-up questions, though, Jill, feel free to send me a text, and I'd be more than happy to help you out. But anyway, getting back to the member questions here. Truck and Car Guy says, I learned my lesson after having one car repoed and getting ripped off at a small dealership. Now I pay for all my cars in cash. Yeah, that's definitely the safest way to do it for sure. SOMD says, I heard M340Is respond really good to mods like downpipes and a tune. And you're in the high 400s. Plus, I heard solid MPGs. Hope to see your review on. Yeah, I mean, I agree. The B58's amazing. It seems like the 3 Series is a great platform. I've heard nothing but good things about them. So yeah, I'm really excited to hopefully try one someday. Raphael says, last month was 3 years with my TRD Camry. Still love it. Around me, I've seen exactly 4 others. Wow, that's cool. They're kind of rare. And thanks for chiming in, Raphael, with your ownership experience. And if you guys want to go back and forth in the comments there, if you have any follow-up questions or anything, I appreciate the response to Raphael, and glad it's treating you well. Let me see. Marco saying it's the 330K one. Getting back to the Mustang wide body thing. Okay, I'm trying. You're talking about the Mustang GTD. Gotcha. Yes, that thing is wild. Yeah, that looks very, very sweet. I doubt those will ever depreciate, and they're probably just gonna end up going for $1 million each, because that whole market's insane for those collector cars. But yeah, that'd be fun to try out someday. I'm not holding my breath for that one, but yeah. And SMD says, yeah, 330K is steep. Yeah, that's a lot for a Mustang, but it seems like it's really, really special. If I had money to burn, like all these billionaires and multimillionaires, sure, why not? Excuse me. So Mike says, hey Matt, what's the longest lasting in terms of mileage performance all season tire, and how many miles out of the longest lasting? I'm not an expert on tires, so I can't say off the top of my head. So as far as performance all seasons, though, I have been looking into that, because that's what I'm looking to do for the Bullitt. I'm swapping from the summer tires to an high performance all season, just because there are some times where I have to drive when it's below freezing and stuff. And I just saw Truck and Car Guy. Thank you so much for gifting those 5 memberships. I really appreciate it. Glad to see everyone snapping those up there. Make sure you have your gifting on there, and your, I guess, acceptance of gifts on, so you can snatch those up. Thanks so much, Truck and Car Guy, for gifting those. I really appreciate the generosity. I'm sure everyone else does as well. But as far as best all season performance tire, I mean, it's going to come down to, again, what your priorities are. I read a really good on Tire Rack. Again, man, I wish I was sponsored. They had a really good comparison that they did of performance all seasons, and the consensus that I took away from it was the Continental was the best all-arounder. The Michelin is slightly better in some aspects for the Pilot Sport for all season. And then the rest of the others seemed like they were good runners-up, and none of them were terrible that they tested. I think they tested 4 or 5. But it seemed like the Continental was Tire Rack's favorite, if just from their testing. And I don't know how objective that is. I don't know if there's any behind the scenes stuff as far as why they chose what they chose, but I'm inclined to think it's a fairly objective review from the way they went about it. So I would say off the top of my head, maybe the Continental, but I don't know. Bridgestone just came out with their new Potenza Sport all season as well. And they are claiming, I think, best in class snow performance in that one. So again, going down to priorities, if you want better snow performance and a performance all season, that one could make the most sense potentially. Again, it just comes down to what you're looking for, as far as what's going to fit you best. And SLMB also says, I saw some tires on Facebook Marketplace called El Jefe, means El Boss in Spanish. Interesting. Yeah. There's a lot of Chinese tires and stuff like that too. And, like those kind of exist also just like for dealerships, like used car dealerships in particular. It's like, hey, it's got new tires. And it's like, an easy, cheap way of being like, we got new tires on this car. Or if a car needs tires, they slap those on and they go about their way. And, people don't look into it that much, especially the average, car buyer. And so it's a kind of an easy thing to do. And then people are like, oh wait, these tires only last 5,000 miles. They drive like crap. They're not safe, yada, yada, yada. And then they end up, swapping tires. But it's one of those things just to check a box from a used car lots kind of perspective. And Blown also says, look at Wierderstein. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, but yeah, I've heard some good stuff about some of theirs as well. And SLMD also says, I feel like you can never go wrong with Michelin's. I have heard, though, the Michelin's are a little noisier for the performance ones, at least. So if that's something some people aren't super into, I think there's some quieter ones typically, but a lot of the Michelin's are, yeah, I mean, I love the Michelin Pilot Sport 4S I have on the Bullitt. It's great. The Michelin's on Beth's Mach-E are really solid too. So yeah, I'm typically a Michelin fan as well, but they are some of the pricier ones out there. And so we'll see what happens with the Bullitt. Again, not 100% finalized, but I may be switching out of the Michelin's here potentially. And let me see other questions here. Troy Cargay says, once I actually have a job, I should get back to normal. Yeah, thanks for the, I appreciate the membership gifting though. And again, never feel like you have to do that, but it's very kind of you. And I really appreciate it, as does everyone else I see there. And SLMD also says, my coworker has a Q50 RS400 and he loves it. He let me drive it and it's felt fairly quick. They are really quick. It's been a few years since I drove and I wouldn't mind revisiting the Red Sports, but just to me, I think it was really the handling that let me down. It just felt a little vanilla handling wise and just wish it had a little bit of extra bite to it. And as I see you're responding to Lucky Luke's question as well. And as far as 370Z versus Q60 Red Sport, personally, if you don't need to have a manual, I actually would say Q60. I love the Q60. I think it's very underappreciated. I think they still look so good, even 5-6 years later now. And I mean, I thought they're really solid. They were really punchy. I mean, again, you had the new Z motor 6 years before it was in the new Z, and it's been kicking butt in that for a long time already. 370 just not as refined. The Q60, obviously, it's heavier and all that, but I don't know. I kind of really like the Q60. It wouldn't be a bad car if I needed something that was all-wheel drive and I still wanted a coupe. That would be kind of something I would consider, especially put an exhaust on it. And it kind of sounds like a GTR, which is like the ultimate all-weather daily driver for me in a lot of ways. So yeah, I think Q60s are pretty sweet. And let me see here. Austin says, I like Nitto tires for my car. It's pretty affordable, American made, and seem to be really good quality. I've heard some good things about Nittos. I know Dodge uses them on their drag focus stuff especially. And I've heard some good things about them as well. Haven't honestly looked into Nittos in a long time though, so I can't give an updated impression on them myself, but thanks for chiming in with that, Austin. Another brand to potentially check out there for anyone who's shopping around for tires. I know we're getting into the fall here, so some people might be shopping for either new all seasons or snow tires as well. And so, yeah, a lot of people probably checking out tires here soon. Marco says Eagle RSA and Lexani are good budget performance tires. My Goodyears lasted about 35,000 miles on my Camaro, and they weren't really loud. Yeah, I mean, even the Michelin's, the Pilot Sport 4S, I mean, I have almost 20,000 miles on the Bullitt, and if it wasn't for the alignment throwing off the one tire to the point where, and me just not catching it fast enough that it was really worn on the one inside front tire there, if it wasn't for that, I would have kept the Michelin's on, and who knows how long they would have lasted. I think I've seen some people getting at least 30,000 miles out of the Pilot Sport 4s. So yeah, 30 to 40,000 seems to be something you can expect from a lot of these, at least as long as you're not tracking them and you're not driving it super hard all the time. But I think that's reasonable to expect out of a lot of these tires. Raphael says, my TRD came with 19-inch Michelin Primacies. I swapped those for Conti Extreme Contacts and 17-inch Bridgestone Blizzaks for winter. Yeah, sounds like a solid setup there. And I'd be curious to hear, Raphael, how it handles winter, because Camry TRD, I'm trying to remember, I don't believe it has a limited slip diff, right? So I'd be curious, once you actually get to some slick stuff, if it puts down the power pretty well and how it's played out for you. Trenton Carguy says, I'm planning to save up for wheel and tire combos. Yeah, it can get expensive, especially when you're going for wheels as well, if you want some nice wheels. And he says, hate having Steelies on my cars. Steelies are really fun, though. I don't know. I think Steelies I think they've kind of already come back a little bit, and like I think they're really good on like the Maverick. You can get them with steelies and stuff, and I think it's great. Rafi says daily driving PS4s on my Type R, I was able to get almost 37,000 out of them. I replaced them due to the rainy season. Wow, 37. Okay, that's one of the highest I think I've seen for those. That's awesome. Thanks for chiming in with that. And yeah, it's a shame that alignment got screwed up because I would have been curious to see. I mean, I probably would have swapped my tires on the Bullitt at 7 years anyway, and we're already up to over 5 now. So I honestly, with the way I drive, I probably would have had to just swap them out due to age before I swapped them out due to the mileage. But that's another PSA random while we're on the topic of tires. Do not drive on old tires. If they're I think it's 7 or 8 years. I have to look back and you can find the date on the tire and you can look up, how to find the date of your tire if you're not sure. But you don't want to drive on old tires. Old tires are super dangerous and sketchy. And I still think that's how Paul Walker died, as they were driving a Porsche Carrera GT on original tires from 2004. And that was in 2013. And the car doesn't have the same grip and performance you expect out of it. Whenever tires are old, they can get dried out and not as grippy. And I think sadly that was the major miscalculation there for them. So got to make sure you stay safe and have some new tires. And Rafi says, I always think of Paul when it comes to old tires. Yeah. Rest in peace to the legend. Yeah. And it's crazy. We'll be coming up here a couple of months on 10 years without Paul, which is just wild. And another one of those like time flies kind of things. It still feels pretty fresh, at least to me. And it's just, it's a shame. But it's one of those things that, doesn't get a lot of press and no one really, highlights that. And you're like, oh, well, I got, I'm not down to the wear bars and, the tires look fine. So I'm good to go. And there's a lot of intricate little chemistry things that happen with tires and, people aren't aware of that stuff. Even race car drivers and real dedicated car enthusiasts like Paul, he just, you don't think about that stuff sometimes, especially if it's not something that was highlighted like back then. But Blown says hockey pucks. Essentially, that's a great way to put it. That's what they turn into, is hockey pucks, and not good, especially when you're talking about fast cars and rear-wheel drive stuff in particular. SOMD says, hey man, I think you saw the success of that Impala SS video. Can you review viewers' cars, possibly modified cars? Love to see your thoughts. Definitely, that is what I'm planning to do here. So in the beginning of the stream, I mentioned how with not having any press cars here for a few months, I'm going to be able to review some owner cars here this fall. I'm going to hop in the Bullitt and start doing some traveling and meet up with some people and reviewing their cars. So I am going to do a lot more of those. It's still going to come down to picking the right car, because there are some times where I have done those and over the past year or two, and they've been terrible views. Like I did a Subaru SVX. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. I have my old Subaru fan base. The SVX is really cool. It's 90s. That kind of stuff is, kind of coming in with the Radwood scene and stuff. And I was like, oh, SVX video is going to do great. And it's like, nope, 5,000 views. Like crap, So, and then, I just do this Impala on a whim, like, hey, this might do well. And 100,000 views in a week, so it still really comes down to picking the right cars, and it's always still just throwing enough stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks, because sometimes I've been convinced, oh, this is going to do great, and it doesn't do well. So we'll just see. I'm going to try and wisely pick the cars I review this fall as far as the modified viewer cars, and hope that the ones that I pick are the right ones for, again, the mass appeal. Obviously, I know all of you who hang out in the chats and are members and all that. Obviously, I'm sure you guys watch most of the videos, but I got to do the mass appeal stuff. So that's what I'm going to be focusing on, is not stuff that I want to review, or maybe necessarily even what you would want to see me review, but stuff that will get the views to get me those widespread, viewership, because it really does help the channel so much. That Impala video got me like over 500 subscribers, which usually my subscriber growth is not fast. And that really helps to kind of perk that up a little bit. It really helps the channel if I pick the right cars for, a wide kind of appeal. So that's going to be the focus here with the modified stuff this fall. And let me see. Rafi says, yeah, time's just flown there with the Paul thing. And SLB says, yeah, 10 years is crazy. He was such a good dude in person too, always giving back to communities. Yeah, he was great. And it's great to see that Reach Out Worldwide, his charity that, does a lot of outreach, still is thriving to this day. And it's always my go-to charity. If you want to support a great cause, Reach Out Worldwide is still, just genuinely helping people in disasters who need help. And it's great to see that, Cody and all them are kind of leading the way with that still, but really a solid charity for anyone who ever wants to give to charity. That's That's always my go-to. Raphael says, no LSD for the Camry TRD, but I'm out in full Cleveland Lake Effect winter and the traction is fine. Wow, that's impressive. The only issue is the body kit makes the car low and we get a lot of snow. So guessing it just turns into a snowplow at a certain point, but that's impressive that it keeps trucking in Lake Effect snow. That is really impressive, because that was the thing that sketched me out with the Sonata N line and the K5 GT. Is I'm like, man, no LSD, and I had the Sonata N line in winter, and there was a snowy day. I was like, I'm not even taking this thing out, because I had taken it on a little bit of a slick road at one point in that Sonata, and that thing was just like all over the place. And I was like, nope, this thing's getting parked until the roads are clear. So I'm glad the Camry does better. That's good to hear, and good advice for anyone else considering those. And SMD says, Matt, have you ever reviewed or seen an Infiniti M56? It's a luxury sedan with a 5.6 liter V8 truck engine in it. I've seen the M56. I remember reading the review of them in Road and Track, the actual magazine, way back when I was a teenager or whatever. Haven't seen one on a road around here, and I couldn't tell you the last time, at least 5 years, probably more. I'd love the review one. I just think there's probably very few of those out there. Excuse me, but yeah, I'd totally be up for reviewing one just for kicks. It'd be fun. And Trent Cargay says they honestly should have ended the franchise once Paul passed. It's not the same anymore. Yeah, and they wrapped it up perfectly with Fast 7 too. Obviously I didn't want to see the franchise, end. It's still one of my favorite franchises. I still am waiting to see Fast 10. I didn't get to see it in theaters, and now it's going to be on the streaming stuff, I think, next week. So I'm going to finally, maybe next weekend, sit down and watch Fast 10. But yeah, I agree. Fast 7 really wrapped it up perfectly, and that would have been a good ending spot for sure. And Rafi agrees there. And she says, thoughts on the Nissan Titan. I did a review on the Nissan Titan a couple of years ago. Especially even back then and now, especially these days, the problem with the Titan is the fact that it is, if you can get a really good deal on one and it's way cheaper than the competition, great. Sounds good. But if it is remotely close to the competitors price-wise, you're better off getting one of the competitors. They're all just more refined. They offer more stuff. So if you're shopping base trucks, then maybe you're not missing out too much. But I feel like even base trucks offer a little more than the base Titan does these days. So to me, the Titan just always came up kind of short in basically every metric. Powertrains, it was just the V8, which is great if you want the V8, but there was no options. I mean, everyone else offers some kind of variation of hybridization now, or something. I guess Chevy doesn't, but at least with Ram you have the e-torque, and with Ford having all the other better options and stuff, it's just I don't know. So like I said, if you can get a Titan way cheaper, which I've heard Nissan's giving huge deals. My family friend, I guess I could call them, they got an Armada for $5,000 off a couple of weeks ago. If there's those kinds of deals out there, I've even heard some people saying they got even more than that off of an Armada, or at least were offered more than that. But so if you can get stuff that cheap, then okay, it could make some sense. But if we're talking sticker price for sticker price, it just falls short. And Rafi says that Fast 10 was a bit much. I watched it a few weeks ago. Yeah, I've kind of heard it's not great, and it ends on a cliffhanger and everything. So I'm going into it with very low expectations. But I just, like many of you, it's just, been an integral part of my car culture growing up. I mean, the first ones would open my eyes to modified car culture, really. And, so I still have that sentimental attachment, even though, it's just hilarious to see them string these along, over and over and over again. So just seeing Vin Diesel behind the wheel just still, does give me a little bit of excitement, so I'm hoping that I enjoy it, even if it's on a very low, simple kind of surface level kind of appreciation. Marco says, speaking of rare, I've only ever seen an M3 GTS, one M3 GTS, I think. It's the one with the gold roll cage. That matte gray really stands out. Yeah, I don't know if I've ever seen one myself, honestly. Yeah, I don't see very many. I see M3s, but I don't see too many of the higher end versions. But let me see. And SMB says, I found less than 10 M56s for sale nationwide. Well, there you go. So yeah, they're pretty rare there. So thanks for the numbers there. Dave says, I haven't seen Fast 9 streaming yet. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's on a streaming service. I do have Fast 9. And I actually enjoyed that one. I saw that one in theaters. I thought it was better than the 8th one. 9 it was still out there and bizarre, but I actually enjoyed 9 better than I was expecting to. So that's why I'm hoping I'm pleasantly, mildly surprised with Fast 10. We'll see. Let me see other questions here. Caught up with the member one. So Dave says my dad's 2013 Trax is still on original tires. I can really feel they're stiff and slippery. Yeah, at that point, if it's original tires on that, I would definitely recommend. Yeah, I think it's 7 or 8 years you want to replace tires just for safety. And let me see. Other questions here. PK says, do you think you will take another drink in next week's news video? Possibly. We'll see. I don't think there's been anything this weekend that's been too distressing. I think there's the new rumors along with the Altima that the Versa could be getting discontinued, which I'll possibly cover next week. But that is the only thing, but I don't even know if I would bust out the whiskey for that, because for the next time I'm going to be drinking a weekly update, I'm going to be either opening a new bottle or polishing off one of the other ones I've been working on behind the scenes. So we'll see which way I go with that. But thankfully, I'm well stocked on whiskey. I asked for it for my birthday last year, and I have a bunch of stuff since I don't drink that often. So I got a bunch of new ones to last me here through a variety of bad news car things for the weekly updates here. So I should be good. Tastebud says he's lucky to get 10 to 15,000 miles per year out of a set of tires. Your mileage will vary. Definitely very true. And Blown says to definitely rotate the tires. Yeah, it's always a good thing to rotate tires if they are the same size all around. The Bullitt, for example, it's a staggered setup, 255s in the front, 275s in the rear. So you can go side to side as far as rotating, but you can't do forwards and backwards, unfortunately, which is typically what you're supposed to do. But and Ryan also says, evening, Matt, what are some of your favorite to drive used cars under 10 grand that you recommend, preferably manual? I guess it depends how old you want to go as far as under 10 grand goes. The first thing that jumped to my mind whenever I read that was Civic Si. Civic Si, they're reliable, they're fun. And when you're talking about under 10 grand, you're typically talking about this stuff that is the naturally aspirated ones still, not the turbo ones. And I think the naturally aspirated ones still are my favorite SIs. So I think those are a really solid little car that are also going to be pretty reliable. Even if it seems like most of the ones out there are well over 100,000 miles. Even if you go for one of those, though, I've seen a lot of them go for 250,000 miles, maybe even more. So, I think you still have a decent amount of life in one of them if it's been maintained well. And, you're in the low-ish to 100,000 miles, or even 150, probably still have some life left in it. So say that's probably the top one off the top of my head. Other stuff you could go for, you can get like used Mustangs, Camaros, things like that for under 10. Might be kind of rough around the edges, but that could be another fun bargain thing there. Other than those, there's some other things. As far as fun to drive, though, it comes down to what you think is fun to drive, whether that's front wheel drive, rear wheel drive, and also where you live as far as, what you can live with, as far as do you need all wheel drive, things like that. So there's a bunch of options, but hopefully that helps you a little bit there, and feel free to ask any follow-ups and I'll try and make sure I don't miss them either. And let me see. So getting back to the member questions here, just came in. So Brian says the first Fast and Furious is his favorite. Yeah, same here. Mike says, Matt, do you think Ram's midsize truck will be body on frame or unibody based on the Hornet? Oh, for the midsize one. I think, I guess it's going to be mid-sized. I don't know if it's mid-sized or not. The, what are they calling the Ram? What is it? Rampage? Yeah, that's it. Rampage just debuted in Mexico or maybe it's a month or two ago now. And that is probably going to come to the States. That is based on, I think, roughly the same platform as the Hornet. And I think the other rumors were that if there's something else that comes, it'll be kind of Hornet based potentially. I don't think that's going to be body on frame for a midsize from them. Who knows? But it sounds like, the pieces for them are they want to have a plug-in hybrid or an electric thing. And so using those smaller platforms makes it easier to do that versus a body on frame, which I think for the STLA frame platform, which is what's going to be underpinning the future Ram, electric and all that kind of stuff for the full-size stuff, that's all an enormous platform with huge battery sizes and stuff. So I feel like that is going to limit them. So I'm pretty sure anything smaller than full-size from Ram is going to be unibody based. I could be wrong, but that's just, what I'm guessing. Raphael says, totally off topic. You've mentioned enjoying sushi. Does Beth like it too? Do you two have a favorite sushi spot? Unfortunately, Beth does not like sushi or any kind of seafood for that matter. Won't go near it. So as far as we don't have a favorite sushi spot, I don't even have a favorite sushi spot because I eat sushi so rarely. It's one of those things that typically, I'll eat it if I'm, with a friend or if I'm on a, media trip or something. Although even media launches, it's very rare that I've ever had sushi. Had a fun little side story though, since you're asking about, food and stuff. It was really fun on the Kona launch here. It was in Baltimore this past week. And so they called the Kona crab feast or something, but it was basically, we actually did a water taxi from our hotel in Baltimore, was in Fells Point there, rode a water taxi over to this separate spot where there was a distillery it was actually a whiskey distillery. And I'm so mad because they were doing a little quick tour of the whiskey facility and I missed the line to go for that. And then I was like, oh, I'm just going to get another old fashioned before I go on the whiskey tour. And then I missed the whiskey tour. I'm like, crap. I was so bummed I missed out on that. But anyway, since it was in Baltimore and they're really, famous for their crabs and all that there, they just dumped crabs onto the table along with some huge shrimp and a few other things. And so we actually, and I didn't know how to properly take apart a whole crab myself to eat it. Thankfully, they had people there that were showing the tables how to actually do that. But that was really fun to pry off the crab and dissect it and, pull the gills out and all that, and then actually eat the crab there. So that was fun, little, adventurous thing. That's where I do all my adventurous eating, is whenever I'm on the press trips or things like that. But typically we have some more mainstream kind of safe stuff. Beth likes to say that she eats like a little kid most of the times as far as her palate goes, so she's not too adventurous food wise. So sushi is definitely off the menu for her. But I've tried to talk her into a California roll or something, but I think even the seaweed wrap kind of puts her off a little bit. So no sushi for Beth. Two says, Matt, no more drinking, please. You keep beating us in the basement. Two, your sense of humor is so funny. Yeah, I appreciate the support every week too. And Trent Car Guy says, Too Fast is debatably my favorite of the franchise. Too Fast is really fun. That was the first one I saw in theaters, and it's also, I'm a little partial to Too Fast, Too Furious just because John Singleton, who directed that, I was in Abduction and had John Singleton pick me out of a lineup of extras to sit next to Taylor Lautner in the one classroom scene I was in. And so getting to actually be directed by John Singleton, who directed Too Fast and Furious, was a mind-blowing event. And that's always, and rest in peace to John Singleton, who passed a couple of years back. Great director for so many reasons, but that was just, that's that kind of ranked Too Fast, Too Furious a little higher up in addition, again, being the first one I saw in theaters. And now the personal connection to that one a little bit is cool. And also fun other little story. I might have told this before, so apologize if some of you have heard this before in a past live stream, but a lot of the times some of the people, it's just kind of a cool behind the scenes thing. Sometimes some of the people who are just drivers that are either driving vehicles for these media launches that we're on, whether it's that they're just they're managing the fleet for the brand new cars, or they're the kind of people that drive up onto the stage for the auto shows and do minor stunt driving. A lot of times those people also just are shuttling us journalists back and forth from the hotel and things like that. And I got to talking with one of the drivers. I'm like, so what do you do whenever you're not, working with Toyota? And he's like, oh, I'm a stunt driver. And he's like, did you see that new, I think he said he was in the new Sportage commercial where they were dragging sand rakes across the beach or something. He's like, yeah, I was the one driving the Sportage in that commercial. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. What other stuff have you done stunt driving in? He's like, did you see Too Fast, Too Furious? I'm like, yes. He's like, I was in one of those cars on that highway chase when they were going to get the cigar from the Ferrari in that, one of those opening chase scenes there. He's like, I was driving one of those cars, racing down the highway. I'm like, that's awesome. And so he was telling me some of the behind the scenes stuff of that. And, mentioning some of the stuff I already knew, how they never planned for the Corvette to, crash and all that. But it was just really cool. I'm like, holy crap, the guy who's just driving me back to the hotel was literally in again, one of my favorite movies. That was like another like there's some really cool like odd things like that happen whenever you do this job. That just you rub shoulders with people that like you would have told me when I was a teenager, like yeah, like that guy's gonna be driving you to the hotel in 15 years or something. Just like wild stuff. So yeah, fun times there. SLMD says, Matt, what's your go-to meal if you're celebrating a special occasion like an anniversary or birthday? I appreciate the off-topic questions there. It's fun. As far as favorite stuff, I don't know. I really love Italian food, so that's usually one of my go-to things. I love like the hibachi kind of stuff. It's one of the other popular things. I also love a good steak. So there's a bunch of different directions I could go into, but those are probably some of my top things. But typically, if I'm having a special meal and celebrating, like steak is usually my go-to thing. Having a good steak and a good old fashioned, it's a good pairing, and just kind of simple kind of dinner. But that's something I always enjoy. But I mean, I like most food, so I'm you name it, and I'd probably eat it. And B Mitchell says, auto journalist credo, eat free or die. That is what has been said. Yes, definitely the free meals are a really nice component of going on these trips, especially just because it is really like sometimes really like top-notch food. And there was, I think, one of the craziest ones. I was at SEMA with Honda. I think it was for the refresh of the last gen SIs. I think this was 2019. Yeah, SEMA potentially. And we went to this. It was, Vegas always has, all these crazy restaurants and stuff, but there was one, it was like one of those experience ones. And I think there was 8 courses, and it wasn't like everything was like insanely expensive. Like it's not we were having caviar or anything like that, but it was just these like bizarre things. Like I had like a bacon wrapped ostrich egg, which is actually super good. There was cotton candy wrapped something, which was also interesting but good. And there was this other thing that was like in this like smoky globe, and they took it off, and there's all these presentation things. But there's sometimes where it's a fun experience, not just like good food. But yeah, they always feed you well on press trips. Typically, there's sometimes where they're not always glamorous. There's been, especially recently in the past few years, they've gone a little cheaper, where it's like wedding food, and it's like, cool, we have a buffet of pasta and some chicken and maybe some little steak things and things like that. But there's sometimes where it's underwhelming, so I don't want to make it seem like it's always amazing, but a lot of times it is some fun food. And Austin says, hey Matt, what do you think manufacturers are focusing, or why do you think manufacturers are focusing on so much fake noises for EVs when electric motors can have their own unique sound signatures? They could also integrate styling around them. I agree. I think that they should play up the natural sounds more. I think some companies have been starting to do that a little bit. There was one thing, I feel like I was just talking about it maybe in a weekly update fairly recently, where it was like they were actually having is it actually the Dodge? I think it might be the Dodge, one of the Dodge things where they actually have a microphone that amplifies the sound from the actual electric motors, and that's what gets then projected into speakers, or I think in the Dodge case, the sound generator, which then goes to actual pipes and stuff. So there are some that are doing that. I get what you mean about the fake thing. I think the fake thing is also just like an easy, fun, since we're in these early days of EVs, it's like, hey, like if you ever wanted a brand new GTI that sounds like an old one, like you can do this. Or like the Hyundai thing, it's like also an easy way to transition people. Be like, yeah, well, you might not love that it's electric, but here, we'll make it sound like a gas car. And trying to appease people, I guess, who might be a little hesitant about jumping into the electric thing. I think they're still trying to win people over, and that's why you have so many of these gas-inspired sounds in some of these EVs. But I agree. I think, yeah, make them all sound like Jetson cars if you want. I think it's cool. It'd be interesting. I mean, this is going to be one of the differentiations, again, since we're going to have very similar power delivery with all these electric motors going forward. The sounds will be a unique way to differentiate yourself. Some will go fake, some will go amplify the natural sounds, some will go totally silent, and that will be one of the key distinctions that I'll be talking about in my reviews here, going forward as well. And I already do, but just these are the ways you can change from what others are doing so that they're not all the same and they're not all silent and boring. I think adding some kind of sound does make it a little more interesting. And the good thing is you can turn them off in, I think, all the cases that I've seen. So, I think that's you know, again, gives people the choice. If you want to have that stuff, you have it. If you want to have it totally silent for whatever reason, you can do that too, you know? So, choice is always good. So, I'm interested to see how they provide new choices here going forward. Trent Carcass says, being an EV owner, is there an EV that you would want to be brought over here that currently isn't made for the US? Yes, the Honda E, or whatever they call it, the E colon something, I think. I don't know. But basically, it's the little round headlight Honda hatchback with an amazing interior, and it looks retro. It doesn't get a ton of range, and so that's why they didn't bring it here. And I don't blame them, because again, everyone has to have 1,000 miles of range or they get all scared. But you know, I think that's would be a really fun competitor to the Mini EV, which is continuing here in the States, I'm pretty sure. And you know, all the other stuff that's lower range, I think it would be great. And it just would have been a good way for Honda to get their foot in the door without needing to rely on General Motors, you know, and have something on their own. Um, I mean, they've brought such quirky stuff in the past. Look at the old, you know, long ago, not the current gen Insights, they're recent, but the old Insight, super quirky. You know, I feel like Honda, you know, was more up for doing these quirky things in the past, and now they're just not. And they're kind of playing it safe a little more. But I thought that was like such a bummer when they didn't bring that thing over here. And Raphael says, I had all you can eat crab one time. My friends still laugh and say I had the table looking like a crime scene. It was so messy. Yeah, crab is a lot of work, especially whenever you have whole crabs. It's a lot of work for not much. But even whenever you're just like throwing the legs, even that's like, you know, a lot of work for these little pieces of meat you pull out of them, you know. But it is very tasty, especially with some good butter, you know, melted butter there. Super, super good. And Marco says Tokyo Drift all the way. Yeah, Tokyo Drift is also up there. They're all, I mean, I think that I love all of them right up until 7. 6 was a little forgettable in my opinion, but 5 was so memorable. I think I loved 5. 4 was great because 4 was like, hey, Vin Diesel's back, and it was like this enormous thing. And also, you know, Paul Walker's driving the STI in that one, so you know, the Super Ducks fan in me got you know, a lot of love out of that one. Yeah, that was just so fun. And yeah, I think they're all those ones that were up to 7 were great. 2 says he's going on his tangents. There's a YouTuber who just does cold readings and tangents. Interesting. That's fun. I wouldn't mind seeing a link to that. That'd be kind of cool. Kind of cool to see, but hopefully some of you appreciate the tangents. 2 says he also has writers in his basements, allegedly. Crazy. SLMD says, are you a fan of Korean barbecue? What's your favorite cut of meat when it comes to steak? I'm a big ribeye guy. Honestly, I'm not picky with steak. I don't love it when it's super chewy. So I'm not like a steak connoisseur who, like, you know, some of these people, it's like my brother-in-law, they're like, oh, just walk past the grill with it, you know, and like barely cook it. I actually do like it, you know, like medium typically. So maybe that discounts my opinion on steaks, but I love Korean barbecue. I don't get it very often either. There's actually not a lot in Pittsburgh, at least that I know of. I don't really venture outside of my little suburban bubble very often. I used to a lot more, but especially just without a lot of free time these days, I don't have the luxury of driving further away for food sometimes. But as far as cut of meat for steaks, you know, I mean, usually it's just like a filet mignon is fine. But I mean, I like most of them, again, as long as it's not too fatty. Harris says, yeah, people say my new Accord at low speed sounds badass because of the EV whir, and they say it sounds like a Star Wars spaceship / Stranger Things type of deal. And I'm like, yeah, yeah, I like Honda's little electrified sound. I think it's pretty cool. My in-laws were joking whenever I had the Lexus RX 350h. In addition to joking about how it looked like a baleen whale on the front to them, it also has the like, oh, like it sounds like, you know, angels are falling out of the sky or something with the Lexus sounds there. It's kind of funny. And thanks for joining in, Harris. He says, hope you're well. Hope you're doing well too, Harris. Thanks for joining in. Marco says, do you have any specific driving shoes, or do you just drive in regular shoes? I've been hearing a lot of good things about Pilates driving shoes. I've never had the Pilates. My go-to, and actually someone made a joke about this on my Impala video. I guess they're an old-time viewer who remembers all the Pumas that I wore for years and years. And the comment was, Matt has a lifetime supply of Pumas Speed Cats. And guilty as charged. I have multiple pairs like waiting for whenever my other pairs are worn out. Puma Speed Cats and the Drift Cats, all the cats from Pumas are and even the regular like non-driving Pumas are some of my favorites just because they're actually really good driving shoes and they're also not super expensive. Typically, if you get a decent deal on them and you're not going for the like Ferrari branded ones and things like that. But those are always my favorites. They're not super comfortable if you have wider feet because they really come down to a point. And if I even my feet, which aren't super wide, but even if I'm driving in them for a long time or walking particularly a long time in them, they do hurt a little bit after a while. So again, they're not perfect, but yeah, they're probably my go-to driving shoes there. But I've heard some good things with some of the other ones too. I just have never tried any other ones out, honestly. I had the Goodyear ones that were made by Adidas a long time ago. Those were fine. They were a little loose from what I can remember, not quite as good as the Pumas. Let me see. Two says, Matt on weekly updates. Fake sound is better than no sound. Me. That's what my girlfriend says. My girlfriend, shocked Pikachu face. Matt, no, bad too. Back in the basement. Yeah. I'm just going to leave that one there. I'm not going to touch that one. Let me see. So American GTS says, hey, Matt, do you think an older Mercedes S550 4MATIC sedan is a better, more enjoyable car than a 2018 Taurus Show? To be honest, it's been a long time since I drove the older gen S550s. I haven't driven the new gen, and the previous gen, I believe that's the one that extends far enough back where I actually drove them back when I was a detailer in high school and college. I'm not very good on S classes. I never review them on the channel because Mercedes typically don't do very well for me either. I have a blind spot when it comes to S classes, so I can't give you any good insights there. I can tell you though, I mean, it's a pretty safe bet from my experience with older S classes. They're definitely going to be more comfortable than the Taurus. And depending on which trim, I mean, so you said S550 4MATIC, depending on whether it has like the AMG line package or other things, it could be a little bit of a sportier handler than the Taurus Show too. The Taurus Show was a little loose in my opinion, and didn't feel as fast as I felt it should have felt. I mean, I reviewed that probably at this point like 7 or 8 years ago, so it's been a long time. Excuse me, been a long time, but yeah, I can't give you the greatest opinion there, unfortunately. And Scott says, what up, dude? What's your ultimate 3-car garage that you would have to own for the rest of time? Well, if I'm, assuming that I am in my, current situation and it'd be like a car for like me and also like for my family and doing family duties and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it would be, the third would be whatever Beth would kind of want as far as a family vehicle. But I would honestly, if it was stuff I'm keeping forever, if there was no price limit and I didn't care about like making a scene everywhere I went, I would say Ferrari 812 GTS, Ferrari GTC4 Lusso, and then Ferrari Purosangue, probably. Or you could also swap and say Aston Martin DBS, Volante, V12 Vantage Volante, and then DBX for a family vehicle, if money's no object. We're talking more reasonable stuff. I would say I'll keep the Bullitt. I would have, like for a family vehicle, I mean, I love our Mach-E, so I mean, I'd be content with that. But then like a third car that I would love to add someday, which is really to me like my guess, I could say like not wildly unrealistic, like partially maybe obtainable someday dream third car is a Lexus LC500 convertible, preferably a 2024 here with the touchscreen for the CarPlay. But honestly, it's a good enough car. I'd deal with one of the older ones with the controller touchpad thing. LC500 convertible, and this is kind of becoming like a running joke with journalists. Like we all agree it's like the perfect car. Basically, again, that is subjective and everyone thinks differently, but we all just like swoon over LC500s right now. And it's just, it's just an amazing V8 and it's paired up to the 10 speed, which is a little bit better than all the other F Sport stuff, which is usually saddled with the 8 speed. So the 10 speed is a little bit better. The sound of that is actually better. They actually, Yamaha tuned that exhaust versus the V8 sound you get with the other Lexus products. Especially the non-F stuff isn't quite as extreme. The LC500 sounds amazing, looks amazing, especially in the right colors, but just looks so good even all these years later. Still looks like a concept car. Drives pretty well, in my opinion, for what it is. It's not the most amazing autocross track car or anything like that, but for actual fun daily driving stuff, sounds great, looks great, has a convertible, which I personally would love to have, just a different experience since the Bullitt's a hardtop. LC500 is just mwah, chef's kiss perfection. So that would be that'd be the way to go for me. Thanks for the fun question, Scott. And Kyle, thank you so much for gifting the 5 memberships there. I really appreciate it. Glad to see everyone's able to snap those up as well. And yeah, thanks so much, Kyle, for the generosity there, and the generosity every week too, I have to add. I think it's just so kind of you. I really appreciate it. And let me get back to the other member questions here. Mike says, Matt, have you looked into the cost of how much it would be to get level 2 installed in your garage? Is the cost not worth it for how much driving you do? Yeah, that's the consensus. So actually, last time we had an electrician come to the house for another reason, I was like, hey, like, just for kicks, can you tell me, how much it would cost to wire this up? And they gave me an estimate, and I don't have the number offhand here. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was, yes, it was expensive. It was definitely, I think it was over $1,000 for sure. And everyone's houses are going to be different. Like, we don't have a dryer right in the garage. A lot of people in, a lot of areas have dryers in their garage. And so it's easy to, just plug it right in for a level 2, and it's simple. But us, we don't have that. So we'd have to run wires, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's just not needed. I mean, for us, if there's even been multiple days where like the Mach-E just sits outside whenever I have like a plug-in hybrid or another EV that I'm reviewing, and I got to top that off for whatever reason. The Mach-E will sit outside for multiple days and still gets driven every day, and they do whatever. They still, they've maybe taken out 25% of the battery tops, So, yeah, we don't drive enough to need it. Level 1 keeps up fine. And there's, sometimes where like, if I know we're going to take a good chunk out of the battery, then I'll just bump it to 100% overnight instead of, we usually stop charging at 90% to preserve the battery life better. But I'll bump it to 100% if I'm like, okay, we're going to do a lot of driving today, and that way I don't have quite as much to make up for whenever I plug it in. But there are some times, and if we did, a road trip a couple of times, and like last year in particular, we were driving back from the beach, and I was doing the fast chargers, but I was doing the fast charging just long enough to be like, okay, let's go, just so we had enough to get home. And I think I got home with, I can't remember what I had, like 5 or 10 miles. I had like, I think 5% of the battery left or something. And that one, like that, it does suck. Cause on level 1, like it takes us like 3 or 4 days to get back to a full charge. And then if you drive a little bit off and on those other days, it takes a little longer. So but I mean, that happens like once a year, maybe. And if I was really in a pinch and I needed to do back-to-back road trips, there's 10 minutes away from us, we have a fast charger and EV Go station. I could, plug it into there and get us back in 20 minutes and be set, So it's not, to me, none of that stuff is worth spending thousands of dollars for a level 2 in our garage. So yeah, it doesn't make sense. For a lot of other people, it does, especially if they do a lot of driving. Obviously, we're just, odd where I work from home. Beth is a stay-at-home mom, so she's just driving for fun activities and things like that. And all that stuff's pretty close too. So just not enough driving. Let me see. Harris says, also, if you had 50 grand to spend, can be as sporty as you want, what would you get? I've been eyeing GT350s hard. Stop me, please. It's just one signature away. It's about to be a bad decision. If it was me, I mean, it would definitely be something, rear-wheel drive, because that's, what I love typically. GT350, the only thing I will say about those, and I'm sure if you've done your research, you already know this, but they consume oil. Not all of them. Some of them seem to not, but it's a high-strung motor. And even Ford, I believe in the owner's manual, says to check your oil level every 1,000 miles because they can consume stuff. And there's been a lot of motors that have just straight up blown up too. And a lot of them, it's just they're not being monitored closely enough. Some maybe just had bad luck. There's a lot of other people that have high miles on them and they're fine. So I don't want to portray the GT350 as, a ticking time bomb or something. There's some solid ones out there, but it's a high strung motor. And with high strung motors comes some trade-offs. It's not going to be super reliable most of the time, unless you're talking about a Honda. So that's the only thing. It's going to be a car. You're going to have to make sure you stay on top of it. And that's also a car you have to baby it. Like, you got to make sure you warm it up properly. You got to make sure that you're really mindful of how you're treating the engine. You can't just hop in it and take off on a cold motor and stuff, so there's some things you need to keep an eye on with GT350s. If you're okay with that stuff and you're okay with the risk level of maybe not having a motor that lasts you 200,000 miles or even maybe 100,000, I don't know, then yes, GT350 is probably one of the best things. I didn't realize they were under 50 grand now. that's probably one of the better things. Again, make sure if you're getting one that's high miles that it is very well maintained. You know the story on it and stuff. Um, Other options for you though. I mean, I'm obviously biased, but you can get a Bullitt under 50 grand, and I think they're fantastic. But what do I know? So that's one other. But there's lots of good choices. I mean, you could probably get a Hellcat or something like that for under that price point. It again comes down to how much handling you want. You can get a great Camaro for under 50 grand. There's all kinds of other fun stuff as well. You can, get probably a used Supra, which is also a ton of fun. For under 50. And Supra's really high up there on the list too, though, I have to say. So if you're asking what I would get, I wouldn't get a GT350 because they freaked me out a little bit with the motor, honestly. And people, when I bought the Bullitt, everyone's like, oh, why would you buy the Bullitt when you can get a GT350 for the same price? And I'm like, yeah, I don't want to be paranoid about an engine. After the Mini freaking me out with, its reliability stuff, the EcoBoost freaking me out after I did a few too many mods. I wanted something reliable. The 5-liter V8 was solid and reliable, and that's also, if you do want something, if you want a Mustang but you want something more solid, I would recommend, if you don't care about the Bullitt thing, go for a Mach 1. Get a used Mach 1. You get the Tremec, you get the great Coyote V8, great car still, and I think that's a really solid pick too. And if I didn't care about the Bullitt thing, Mach 1 would be right up there with Supra as my top picks, right around the $50,000 price point. But Supra is also fantastic. It's more fun. It's more tail happy. It's more savage in some ways, especially with the 8-speed auto. It's ripping off shifts. It's so fast. I love the small size of those. You really feel like you're sitting on the ground. It's a way sportier experience than even the GT350, just because of how small it is in there. And it's more sports car-like. But I mean, like I said, GT350 is pure magic, though. It is amazing. You can go rewatch my video again if you want to, really drive the point home, especially my updated review I did on it, a few years back was even a little bit better, and I had more time with it then. But yeah, that would be a good one, though. You can't go wrong. There's a lot of good stuff. And congrats on being in the position, Harris, where you were able to make that kind of a decision. That's a very good conundrum to have. So congrats to you for that. And let me know what you end up picking up at some point. And Austin says, I wish manufacturers would show the electric motors too, something like that Dodge concept car in the 80s movie, The Wraith. If electric is the future, I want some excitement. That'd be cool too. Yeah, I think the thing is that it's tough to show off electric motors because everyone wants to have better handling, and to have better handling, you got to keep it as low as possible. And the great thing with those electric motors is they're nice and small. You put them right on the floor there, and that makes it hard to see. It would be cool though if, you have like a little bit of, a window to see maybe in your footwell or something there to check it out. That would be kind of cool. I don't know. I mean, I guess you could see some stuff. Obviously, you couldn't see it working or anything. It's not like you're talking about like a open hood on a gas engine or something, but there could still be some stuff to see. That'd be a cool idea. And I'm sure someone will do that at some point. And if not, then yeah, it's definitely a missed opportunity for sure. Two says the Toyota Lexus sellout comes out. Harris says we had an LC500 in our family for 3 years from 2017 to 2020. I think you used to see photos of it on my old photography page, Matt. Can't thank you enough for the support back then. Absolutely. I said, but we loved it. That's great. I'm so glad you loved it. I'm curious to hear why you guys got rid of it. I didn't realize you didn't have it anymore in the family, but hopefully it treated you well, and glad you guys loved it though. SOMD says, Matt, if you had to buy a used sedan that's sporty for under 35 grand, used rear-wheel drive preferred. I need a minute to think about this. So used sedan, rear-wheel drive under 35. I mean, there's not a whole lot. If you want reliable, I'd say IS 350, F Sport, something like that. That you're actually going to keep for a long time, and it's higher mileage and stuff. If you're not opposed to higher risk, then you can go to the European stuff. I'm sure, you probably get an M340i for 35 grand. I haven't driven it, so I can't say. My blanket warning I always give though for, used European vehicles, get an extended warranty and be prepared for, some time in the shop, because they can be glitchy after the lease period. I really feel like most of them are built to be lease vehicles. But, mechanically, they seem like the motors are stout. It's just the electrical stuff that ends up kind of getting to be a little annoying sometimes. But, I'm trying to think of other stuff. If I don't know what the pricing's like on Chevy SS sedans and how old you want to go, but if you can get a Chevy SS sedan with a manual rear-wheel drive, whew, those drive so well. Again, you're gonna have old tech. It's not super exciting looking or anything. So I can understand, if it's not something that you'd be excited about. But SS sedan is really, really up there as far as really impressive vehicles that I think are really underappreciated. It just drove so well, and it's just an amazing driving vehicle. So another oddball there to maybe throw in the mix alongside all the usual, suspects there in that kind of a segment there. But I think, yeah, there's a lot of good stuff there. But I think if it were me, I might actually go for the SS sedan for that price point. Again, I'd have to test drive the other stuff to see, but I mean, nothing from Mercedes excites me at under 35 grand. It's rear-wheel drive necessarily. I mean, the C classes are fine, but to me, it's not as sporty as most likely the BMW will be. Audi S4 is kind of again, not available in rear-wheel drive either. So yeah, IS350 is great. Not the most exciting either, but a solid car. And again, will run forever and be solid if that's what you're going for as well. And they look great, in my opinion, as well, especially the newer ones here, which I guess might not be under 35. But yeah, that's all I can think of off the top of my head. Hopefully it helps you a little bit. If you also want to go a little wilder, you can go for a used Charger Scat Pack or something like that too. That could be a fun choice. Yeah, and now Jeremy, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, "Hi Matt, is there a new car that's similar to an F87 M2? The new M2 has become so much bigger and heavier." Well, I'd say Supra is kind of a similar thing, because you have some of those BMW mechanicals and even interior bits and stuff, but it's a smaller car. And I mean, Supras aren't light necessarily, but I mean, honestly, if that's your complaint with the M2 is it's too big and heavy, Supra, especially if you like BMW stuff, Supra is your answer, in my opinion. And you can now get it with a manual and stuff. So that would be the way I would go in that position. As far as other stuff, though, there's really not a whole lot else to pick from that's going to be smaller and lighter than an M2. It's heavier now, but still lighter or as light as a Mustang or Camaro, really. So that would, yeah, I'd say Supra. That's really the one. I mean, I guess you could say Z, but in any cross-shopping comparison, I would take Supra over Z any day of the week. So yeah, I'd say Supra is the short answer. Thank you so much for the super chat, Jeremy. And again, let me know if you have any follow-ups there. I'd be happy to help you out a little bit there. Let me see other questions. I see also Mitchell really quickly. He says, "Did you see a bump in your homeowner's insurance once you got the Mach-E?" Did not see any change in homeowner's insurance. Car insurance definitely went up. I mean, everyone's car insurance has been going up recently, but the Mach-E in particular, all these things that have the more advanced sensors on the front with, the Blue Cruise system in the Mach-E and just being electric, our insurance rates actually went up a good bit from what they were on Beth's, Mercedes C-Class. It was a 2019. I mean, it went up a good bit. So, but yeah, not any changes on the homeowner's insurance, thankfully. So that was good. And Marco says, "Time for a lunch break in the mountains. If you can go anywhere in your Bullitt, where would you drive first?" I would love to drive the Dragons, Tail of the Dragon in Tennessee or whatever the canyon's called. Yeah, Tail of the Dragon. I've been wanting to do Tail of the Dragon for years as well. I've never made it happen. I'm hoping to do it at some point. But the first place I would go with the Bullitt would be San Francisco and just retrace the Bullitt chase scene. That is the number one place I want to take the Bullitt someday. But yeah, Tail of the Dragon's great. There's a lot of really fun roads. I'd also love to take the Bullitt down. So I went to school at Virginia Tech, and there's so many good roads down there, and I've never been back since I had the Bullitt or any Mustangs for that matter. The last time I was down there was actually when I had the Mini. So I'd love to go back in the Bullitt and just drive all the old roads I drove in college. That would be a dream. So I'm hoping, to me, that's a lot more attainable from a time standpoint versus going to San Francisco. Virginia is a lot of an easier drive there. So let me see other questions here. Marco says, "Man, if I can ever get my hands on a newer RS3 under 50 grand, yeah, RS3 is great if you're looking for nothing. Yeah, if you're looking for something all-wheel drive, RS3, yeah, is really fun as long as you're okay with the smaller size. That's an amazing car for sure." Ace of Spades, thanks for joining in and says, "Howdy." Harris says, "I appreciate the answer, Matt. I might wait until April ish next summer. Not sure if interest rates are going to lower, and yes, higher. Under 50,000 miles or under 50. Crazy. Maybe a Bullitt. We'll see. Well, yeah, don't get a Bullitt. It's again no pressure there. I think it's a genuinely good car, just because take the Bullitt thing out of it. Just any newer Mustang 2019 and up, you have the auto rev match manual. The manual isn't amazing, but you have an active exhaust with 4 modes. You have adaptive dampers available with the Magna Ride suspension. You have all the tech with heated and cooled seats. You have your CarPlay. You have all the adjustability of the digital gauges. Just all the customization, all the aftermarket support. Just the Mustang's just still a really solid buy in my opinion. Again, just even taking off my Mustang fanboy and don't pay any attention to the Mustang Alley stuff and all the other stuff. It's a genuinely good car, I think. And I think that's why they're still, super popular. Nub says, "Love my Supra. It's a good time." Well, thanks for chiming in, Nub, and glad you're still enjoying yours. I'd be curious to hear how many miles you have on it and how it's held up over the years here. Rafi says, "Random question: Are you ready for Apple Day on Tuesday?" I am. Yeah, I am excited for that. I'm probably going to go for the 15 Pro here because I have a 13 Pro, and getting ready to be eligible here for an upgrade. May actually switch carriers too because I'm not in love with AT&T. Not sponsored as I'm talking trash on them, but they on a lot of the trips that I've been on, I'm like in the middle of a huge city and I have like slow service. And there's been so many times where it's like, "Oh, you have 5G," and it's like, no, I don't. Like this is like worse than 3G used to be. Like I don't know. AT&T's just let me down a lot, and I've had AT&T ever since the original iPhone back in 2007, and that was why I went to AT&T, and then now they obviously have opened it up to the other carriers. So I may actually switch to potentially T-Mobile. We'll see, but so we'll see how it all shakes out here. But I'm excited. There's like that new, I think, dark blue titanium color. Kind of reminds me of like the blue tips on titanium exhaust. So we'll see how it actually looks color-wise, but that's probably gonna be the way I'll go. But I'm excited for the 15 Pro, and hopefully it's not crazy expensive or have any other weird things. Because thankfully my 13 Pro has been really good. I know a lot of people have had bad luck with the 14s, and they're not quite as well made, it seems. So hopefully they get the quality control back, and they do something good here with the 15 Pros. So we'll see. But I'm excited for that. And Harris says, "I hear you about the 350 stuff. I might see I might see otherwise because I don't want that headache either. Thanks for the great answer. Mach 1 is sick too." Hopefully it helps you there. And let me see. Raphael says, "I just can't afford a Camaro ZL1, so I considered a used one. But for cars like that, I worry about how much they were beaten up." Definitely a valid concern, but also, it's not impossible to find ones that have been babied because, there are a lot of people that beat them up, but especially if you find one that's like really clean and stock and even low mileage, then those could be the like grandpa, like babying kind of cars that, never go out on a rainy day and, just go to the local car show. They put the hood up and like, put their plaque up and sit in a lawn chair, and then they drive it back home to the garage. And there's a lot of those kind of people that buy those kind of cars too. So, it is possible to find one that hasn't been put through the ringer. You just really got to, look at it, with a magnifying glass and make sure it's not one of the rough ones. Truck Car Guy says, "I've been seeing a few more Supras around, and it's a good thing to see. Also, quite a few 86s. Yeah, I've been seeing a decent amount of 86s. Supras are still really rare around me. I see them every once in a while, but they're not as common as the new 86s, even though the Supra's been around for a few more years. I actually just saw a silver BRZ pass me by, the new one, whenever I was driving home today, and I was like, oh, man. Every time the BRZ just keeps pulling on my heartstrings. It's just, that'd be another one I'd love to add to the garage someday if I could have the insane redundancy of 2 small rear-wheel drive manual hardtop sports cars, which I couldn't justify. But it'd be nice to have both for whatever reason someday. Let me see here. Diego says, "How do you feel about diesel vehicles? I'm picking up an X5 diesel next weekend, and I'm excited." Well, congrats on the incoming new edition there. Diesels are great. I think, it's unfortunate the way it all played out with, all the Dieselgate stuff really giving it a bad name. But I mean, diesels are still just brilliant. They get insane fuel economy, insane range. If you do them well, they can be, pretty clean and really easy from a maintenance standpoint. And they're really torquey motors. Obviously, they're not very fun to ring out because you have, much smaller, power band to work with. But especially for, road trip vehicles and utilitarian vehicles where you're not, again, trying to have the most fun possible, I think diesel's great. I love it a lot. Diesel trucks I'm a little less excited about personally, just because of just the way that they usually get modified. But as far as diesel vehicles, non-trucks goes, I think diesel's great. Ace of Spades says the new Acura EV looks interesting. Not sure what to think about its interior being taken from a Cadillac Lyriq. Yeah, well, and I covered this also in my weekly update when it came out for the the ZDX, and it looks good. It's just that interior, yeah, is gonna be the problem. I don't even think some of it comes from the Lyriq. It seems like some of it's coming from like the Blazer, with having the same kind of stuff in the middle as the Blazer, having plastic window switches that are worse than a Civic. And I was ranting to another journalist at the Hyundai thing this past week about that as well. And I was like, why could they not have swapped the little plastic cap on the window switch? You don't have to swap out the whole window switch or anything. If they have to have those electronics from GM for whatever reason, fine. But there's a plastic piece there. Like, if someone on eBay can sell a little cover to make it look better, you can do the same. Like, there's got to be an OEM way to not have plastic GM window switches in your $70,000 Acura. I mean, we'll see. Maybe Acura will keep me far away from that vehicle so that I don't review it for a long time, because I'm going to be blunt about that interior. And when a Civic has nicer window switches than that Acura does, not cool. Not cool. I'm not going to let that fly in my review, at least. And Dave says Chevy SS. Yes, it's a very unknown vehicle, but yeah, it came from Australia. Holden originally made them as a Holden Monero. And they were brought over here as the Chevy SS for a couple of years, called the Chevy SS Sedan. Horrible name, very generic looking car, unfortunately, but fantastic platform, fantastic driving vehicle, and one of the best sleepers out there, in my opinion. And William said, are Stingers or G70s that low yet? Stingers and G70s are low. So that is a good point William brought up. Yeah, speaking about rear-wheel drive stuff under 35 grand. Thank you for pointing that out, William. I forgot about those. G70s absolutely are, especially if you're not going for the twin-turbo V6. But even the twin-turbo V6 is like 30-something. Great value, especially if you get a certified one. You get the 10-year warranty on it. Stingers, same deal. I think Stingers are a little more pricey. I'm not sure if I've seen a nice Stinger GT for under 35 yet. Maybe some that are higher mileage and a little rougher. Because I do check Stinger prices every once in a while just for kicks. That's still like an ultimate like dad car kind of for me. I still love the Stingers. But I think those might be over 35 still for a decent one. G70s, though, totally in play. If you are okay with a smaller back seat, G70 is great. Such a good value. Thanks for bringing that up, William. Harris says if it was a 3-year lease for the LC 500, 30,000 miles. After 3 years, we wanted something else. Have a white M80i or 850i X-Drive now, but I missed the LC 500. Would 100% recommend. Well, thanks for the insight there. And yeah, I've never driven the M8s there, so I can't say as far as those go personally. But I don't know. I'd be curious to hear what you think about the BMW, but I feel like I'd probably rather have the LC myself. But I'm sure it's a sweet car for sure. And the X-Drive is nice to have too. And SMD says he'd love a Chevy SS, and Dave's also saying a Pontiac G8 too. Yeah, G8s are great. Yeah. Oh, I see. Sorry, Dave, if I was over-explaining. You were suggesting the SS along with me there. Sorry about that. The G8's great too if you want something a little older and a little more affordable there with the automatic. This never had the manual, but great one as well. Triton Cargas says, I kind of wish Dodge had thrown the 6-speed from the Challenger into the Charger. I'm sure people would have bought them all day. I agree. They totally could have. I don't know why they never did that. I guess they just didn't see a reason to. I don't know. I'm right there with you, though. And SLB says 2014 Chevy SS, 86,000 miles for 30 grand. No hate, but I see so many Chargers. Totally get that. Yeah, Chargers are very common. So yeah, SS could be a cool, unique choice. Trenton Gargas says, especially, Charger is a fleet car as well, which is very true. Mike says, is a previous gen Golf R the best used all-wheel drive performance car value? Probably, since WRXs hold their value unrealistically well. Yeah, Golf R probably is. Again, just you're talking about running the risk with a used European vehicle, which gives me the nervousness every once in a while. But yeah, I'd say otherwise probably, because there's really not a ton out there as far as actual performance cars go. I would also argue if you want all-wheel drive and you want a good bit of power, Mazda 3 Turbo is also great. Again, not the sportiest setup, but especially if it's something you're going to keep a long time, I would rather take a Mazda 3 Turbo, put better wheels and tires and suspension on it to have keep up with a Golf R a little bit better. Probably would never still be quite as quick, and you get the 6-speed auto, which isn't going to be as snappy. But me, I might actually go Mazda 3 Turbo hatch with mods before I go Golf R personally. Golf R is amazing. It just, again, my sister got burned with a Volkswagen in the past. I'm not sold on their long-term reliability. So yeah, I personally couldn't recommend buying a used Volkswagen, especially without an extended warranty. But for people who don't have those holdups, definitely a great choice. Jazz says, I don't get the question about home insurance. Does home insurance ask you if you have an electric car? I think some might. I actually don't think my insurer asked me about it. I mean, they know what I have because I have it bundled with my car insurance. But I think that the point of the question there, Jazz, was I think there's been some of these battery fires, and that was going to make some insurers sketched out. So I think that's kind of the thing, is maybe there's some angle there to charge extra because of the higher risk potentially of having an EV in the garage. But I haven't encountered that, and I don't think I've actually heard of anyone else having that. But I mean, I'm sure that's totally possible. Insurers will always try and find a way to charge you extra money for imaginary risks that really aren't that common. But yeah, that's probably the point there. But Harris says, if you have time, the San Francisco trip would be an amazing vlog if you go in the Bullitt if you have time. Yeah, when I tried it, even when I first got it, I was considering doing like a vlog and seeing if that would justify doing it. The problem with vlogs for me, I'll admit I'm not a good vlogger. I'm awkward in public with a camera. I don't like, a lot of people, they have no shame and they're just like, oh, I'll just like blab everywhere in public and everyone's staring at me and I don't care. Me, I'm like, I don't want anyone to hear me. And I'm like, I'm not a great vlogger. I've never had the comfort level to do that very well in public. But if it was just like me driving and like, not having to be in a crowded space with a camera, it'd be fine. It's just that when I've tried doing vlog stuff in the past, or even anything about the Bullitt that isn't like an update video, they just don't do very well. Like I had the one thing where I was like, oh, I'm doing a road rally in the Bullitt, and like there was an intense storm and all that, and it didn't get very many views, and like when I did the awesome road trip with all the other YouTubers, that I'm like, man, I got like Chris Fix and Jason, Engineering Explained and all these guys in my video, and no one watched that either, So there's the ones I've done, like that was a really cool road trip. And I mentioned this in a couple of live streams ago as well. But that was like a really cool vlog. Like we're like literally driving to the Daytona 500, and it was just like a really fun trip, and no one watched it. So I mean, again, that was at this point, what was that, 4 years ago now? So maybe there'd be more of an appetite here now, but I don't know. It's probably something worth trying. It's a valid point. I could try and do a vlog and see if there's some actual interest in it. And if so, then yeah, sign me up. I'll just use that as my justification to like, oh, this is a video series, this is work, and then just do the road trip and, have it be a fun vlog for sure. I think that the key to doing a good vlog too, if I were to do something like that, is to like have someone ride with me who's really entertaining and, film those conversations. And it could be fun if I went with my friend, because it would be tough to do with the family. So I wouldn't be able to do that. But if I went with my buddy, it could be fun to kind of just have like unfiltered conversations while driving, and our observations that has some promise. I know there's just not much vlog appetite on this channel. Everyone subscribes to the reviews, and that's what you've grown to expect here. So it'd probably be tough to branch out, but it's a tempting idea for sure, Harris. Jazz says, will your daughter go to Virginia Tech? No idea. I'm hoping to, maybe show her Virginia Tech at some point and see what she thinks. And she might, have some bias there because of, me going there. But I'm not one of those people who's like, oh, you have to do everything I do and trying to, mold my kid into doing exactly what I want them to do. She'll be totally free. She can go wherever she wants. If she wants to go to college at all, she doesn't have to. I'm not really using my degree at all. So, my personal opinion on college is, can be if you're not doing one of the traditional things that always leads to a good job, a lot of times it's just a waste anyway. So it comes down to, again, exactly what you're doing and all that and where you go and how good your grades are and everything. But yeah, it's going to be totally, whatever makes her happy. I'll be there to support her. Ace of Spades is perhaps it's related to risk. Yeah, with the house burning down kind of thing. Yeah, for that. Austin says also another off-topic question: who is the most famous non-car person you've met, Matt? That's a good question. Non-car person. I mean, I've been able to meet other celebrities just randomly. And as far as like because I did all the movie stuff, so I was an extra, but most of those people I didn't formally meet. I mean, I did meet Taylor Lautner because I was sitting right next to him and we were like chatting briefly. It's one of those things when you're an extra in movies, at least it used to be the etiquette was you don't talk to them unless they talk to you first because they're working and you're just background. You're supposed to just be like wallpaper and only speak when spoken to. But he was actually chatting with some of us. And again, we didn't have a deep conversation or anything, but, it was a pleasant little, small talk thing with him. And like Emma Watson walked right past me when I was in Perks of Being a Wallflower a couple of times, but I never actually got to like say hi to her. I don't think she thanked all of us as a group, but that was it. So it's not like meeting her. And what other movie stuff? I mean, Russell Crowe, I was a few feet away from him in an extra, in a movie for Fathers and Daughters, but never actually met him either. But he was one of my favorite actors at the time and still is to this day. But watching him work was really fascinating. As far as other non-car people, I mean, I guess you can he is a car person, but he's not a reviewer. But Sung Kang, getting to meet him at SEMA back in, was like 2016, I met him. That was awesome to meet him, and super nice guy. And that was actually, we got to like meet and hang out. I got to interview him and like talk with him. And that was like, mind blown. That was awesome. So that was probably one of my more lengthy celebrity, encounters, I guess I could say. So that was fun. I'm trying to think of other stuff off the top of my head as far as famous people goes. That's probably the extent of it. Yeah. If I think of anything else, I'll let you know, but I'd say those are probably the top ones off the top of my head there. And then John Singleton, again, being, an amazing director, getting to meet him and having him, like, it was just like, this whole lineup, and he picked me to be the person to, be kind of like the featured extra there. And, it's just really nice of him to do that. So another awesome person that I was able to meet. But yeah, thanks for the fun question. Let me see. So Nub says 21 with 22,000 miles for a Supra. That's awesome. Glad it's holding up well here in the 20,000 mile range there, and glad you're able to drive a good bit too. That's awesome. SLMD says, Matt, your Chevy SS videos did pretty good view wise. Top 5 cars of that you reviewed you wish you could have kept because of the way they drove. That's a good question. Top 5. Well, okay, LC500 convertible, definitely one of them. Other ones, I have to like really sit down and like look at all the stuff that I reviewed of like what were some of my favorites. Trying to think. I don't know. There's a bunch that are like high end that were fun, but I don't know if I'd actually want to keep them. Like, I love the 720S McLaren, but that's also been a little wonky with electronics in those, so I wouldn't want to actually own one of those. Rolls Royces I've reviewed are really sweet, but I wouldn't actually want to own one of those because I'd rather have a Bentley personally if I'm spending that kind of money, and I haven't reviewed the newer Bentleys. NSX was fun, but I don't think I actually would ever own the NSX for what it costs. I think there's more fun vehicles, but that was another really fun one to review. RS6 Avant, that was one that really blew me away, and I would definitely like to have one of those. That'd be one. So there's 2. But yeah, I can't think of any other stuff off the top of my head here that's like mind-blowingly amazing that I like must have. Because all my favorite brands, typically Ferrari and Aston Martin, are my 2 top ones. And so I haven't really reviewed any of their stuff. I drove an old V8 Vantage a long time ago, but that didn't, I mean, the paddle shifted transmission of that one wasn't amazing, so it sounded really good. But again, if I'm going for a V8 convertible, I just have the LC500 convertible. So yeah. I haven't driven any Ferraris other than a 308, and then I didn't review it, but I drove a 430 Scuderia in Italy a long time ago. So that would be another amazing one. But anyway, yeah, that's the top few there. Sorry, I can't give you a full 5, but and he also says I have T-Mobile and my wife has Verizon. She always talks crap about my signal. Yeah, and then see around here, Verizon's like bad. It always comes down to where you're at, because like around here, yeah, Verizon's not super good. T-Mobile seems to be about as good as AT&T. And then yeah, it just seems like in cities, T-Mobile seems to be better. Very rarely like out in the middle of nowhere where Verizon seems to do a little bit better sometimes. So just yeah, it comes down to everything. As somebody also says, he's got the 13 Pro Max. Yeah, I don't have the Max because I just for me, I want something that still can fit in my pocket without it feeling enormous. And so for me, I've always not gone for the Max. They're just too big. And this same deal with this new one. I'm probably not going to go for the Max, even though the Max is going to have the periscope lens, which would be great. But I'm like, how often do I use even the 3x zoom on my regular, camera? Like, I don't really use it that much, so I don't think I need it. To be cool to have, and I know that's only going to be on the Max, but I got to stick to the small one personally. And Trunk Argus has been with Metro PCS for like 6 or 7 years now. Glad they've been treating you well. Raphael says, I've seen a few Supras, never seen a BRZ or an 86. Crazy. Excuse me. Harris has meant to say, I'm Team Pixel. I don't know why I just said a smiley face. Interesting. Yeah, I see my buddy had a Pixel, and then it just like seemed like it fell apart really fast, and it just didn't last as long as the competitors do. But everyone's mileage varies, right? Everyone's got their preferences there. And he says, used to switch from an iPhone. That's cool that you switched and you were okay with that. I'm so in the Apple ecosystem now that I feel like I could never break out because it all works together so well, and I'm sure on the Google side, there's probably stuff that works really well together too. But for me, it's just like, it's all so seamless. And that's one of the things I love about all the Apple integration stuff. Let me see. Sherman Car Guy says, if I had to get a newish car, it would likely be an 86. Yeah, there's a solid choice for sure. Jeremy says, random question, Matt, how did you like Virginia Tech? I chose UMD over Virginia Tech. I love Virginia Tech. I had a really great time there. It was a great school. The food is some of the best in the country, and I definitely ate well for those 4 years. It was really good food. That was like the one standout thing for Virginia Tech. The football was also great too, if you're into that. I'm not super into football, but when I was there, I was, and it was a ton of fun to have season tickets and go to Lane Stadium for games. But I loved it. It was great. It's a beautiful campus. Everyone there was really nice for the most part. Everything was just really good. Great teachers, a lot of fun experiences, and really liked it a lot. Definitely recommend Virginia Tech if it's something that fits any people looking for colleges. It's an endorsement. It was pricey being out of state. That's the only thing I will say. Out of state, it makes a lot less sense than it does when you're in state, because it was expensive to go there. But it was fun otherwise. Two says, which YouTube did you find to be a surprising car guy? I used to think MK BHD, but he just reviews high-tech cars. But Austin Evans is a track warrior, even with his nerdy quirkiness. I don't know of any other YouTubers that I know of that like weren't car reviewers that are now into cars. Really, it's a good question too, but I don't have an answer. I don't really watch a lot of YouTube either outside of the car review stuff, so I don't really have too much exposure to that. I think the one cool thing that just dawned on me. So the one main guy from Smosh, those of you, I'm dating myself with liking these channels that have been around for ages, but Smosh was into like the WRXs and stuff back in the day. I think he had like a WRX swapped Impreza 2.5 RS, like the GCH generation. I think now he's got like a Macan Turbo, or at least he did when I watched one of his videos a while back now. Like kind of cool. I'm like, oh, sweet. Like, it's kind of into cars, even though he's never like really talked about it, I don't think. But that's the only one I can think of off the top of my head. Dave says, what car do you regret not buying? I drove a 17 Camaro SS pre-COVID, but it had an accident on record. I could have bought it and sold it after 3 years and still made 10 grand profit. That sucks. Yeah. Car that I regret not buying. I mean, there's a bunch, I've never been in a position to like buy and hold something just for kicks. It's always been like buying what I needed and, buying what fit me and something I was going to drive a bunch. Like I came across when I used to work as a detailer way back when. There was a really pristine black Honda S2000 that came in, and I considered buying it, but I just needed all-wheel drive at the time, so I didn't. But I mean, that thing, if I would have held on to that, would have been worth probably big money, especially if it didn't have a lot of miles. I regret not buying at that dealership again that I worked at. This was like 2009. They got a 2008 Bullitt traded in, and even back then I loved the Bullets, but again, I needed all-wheel drive, or I thought I did at least, and so I didn't want to do rural drive and snow tires. And but that would have been, I think I could have gotten that for like 20 grand, like a year old for a Bullet, which would have been a great deal. And even these days, it seems like even now, like an '08 Bullet, they typically go for over 20 grand. So I mean, that would have been a solid investment, and would have been fun to, because I always wanted to get into the Mustang thing, even with having the BRZ and loving that and stuff. I always had kind of one foot in the Mustang world, or wanting to get into the Mustang world. So I kind of wish that I had been able to appreciate the S197s, and I never got to experience that. I just got into it with the S550s. And so yeah, I do kind of wish that I had gotten to enjoy an S197 at some point. SOMD says, I see some mean looking Supras around me all the time. They have welds on the rear with some sticky tires. Pull the trigger on the G86, you deserve it. I wish I could. It's just, not in the cards right now. And like I said, I don't even drive the Bullet enough to even justify keeping that. Honestly, it just sits most of the time, and it sucks they would just have that, just sit around and not have time to drive that. So definitely can't I can't justify any kind of third car for sure, and probably won't ever be able to, at least not for a long, long time. But who knows? Maybe things will change and the channel will blow up someday, and I can, buy some fancy cars like all these other big shot YouTubers, do car videos. But not holding my breath for that. So in the meantime, I love the Bullet. It's my affordable dream car, attainable dream car, and if that's the nicest car I ever own, I'm good. I'm happy with that. I'm very content. And let me see. So Harris says that's what we were saying. But the M850i is the N63 motor, 523 horsepower, and it's pretty nice. But yes, the LC 500 is more luxury. The M is sportier, but LC is perfect. 471 horsepower, perfect. You'll get one, brother. I hope so. I hope to get one someday. I hope that they actually depreciate to a level that I can afford, but it seems like they're kind of holding their value a little bit. We'll see, especially the convertibles. But hopefully someday there will be a convertible with my name on it. Mike says, do you think a 2020 CT4V non-Blackwing will be an underappreciated performance bargain as far as gas cars or something like that that just gets overshadowed by the Model 3 performance? Absolutely. CT4 is a great car, and that was another thing I pointed out for people, even whenever I was talking about the Integra Type S and everyone who was complaining about how it doesn't have all-wheel drive. I'm like, the CT4V is kind of like this underappreciated, big turbo 4-cylinder with well over 300 horsepower. That's like 380 pound-feet of torque or something insane. All-wheel drive available. It's a small, nimble, agile little car. So underappreciated. And I mean, that video did okay, but even, just on YouTube, even is underappreciated, and people just aren't buying them either. It seems like CT5 selling well, but CT4 just still isn't selling as well as I feel like it should. It's still a really good car. So good. All those Cadillacs are really underappreciated, at least as far as the sedans goes. So slept on. They're all just amazing. So yes, highly recommend CT4Vs. Especially, you can get them fairly cheap now, and that goes back again. Another suggestion there, for those looking for a rear-wheel drive sports sedan. Fantastic cars, both the CT5V and the CT4V non-Blackwings. Really good cars, and you have great Bose stereo, heated and cooled seats. The newer ones get Super Cruise even. I mean, just so much nice stuff. So yeah, I love those Cadillac sedans. Jazz says maybe vlog when the tree fell on your car. Or maybe a vlog when the tree fell in your car. Yeah, it's that one. I mean, I did do a video on that, and that did well just because it was the shock and awe thing, and all that. But yeah, aside from those types of things, it's tough to get views on vlogs for sure. Dave says Straight Pipes do live chats when driving around using iPhones. That's kind of cool. Maybe a little distracting. I guess I could do it if I'm not reading comments, but if I'm just blabbing in a live chat, that could be kind of fun. Trent Car Guy says college is way overhyped nowadays. I tend to agree these days, especially with how expensive it's gotten recently. And Raphael says, I've met a few people, but I got a guitar lesson from BB King. That one tops the list for me. That is awesome. Congrats. That is so, so cool. And Harris says he loves BB King, blues, classic rock, etc. I got to say hi to Mark Knopfler after a concert one time. Not sure who that is, but that's awesome. I'm not up on music as well as I should be. Marco says, serious question, Coke or Pepsi? I'm actually not that picky. I think when it comes to the variants of Coke and Pepsi, I typically like I like vanilla Coke better than vanilla Pepsi and stuff. So I'd say Coke, but Austin says Dr. Pepper. There's no wrong answer in my opinion, though. Harris says, Matt, hearing your stories about being an extra is so cool. I wanted to be an actor for the longest, but I don't know if I'll be good for it. So law it is. Who knows? Maybe you can mentor me for it. Well, the extra thing is easy to do. Obviously, acting is one of those, like one of a million things that's really tough. I had a good friend that tried acting for a good long while. He moved to LA, really tried to, work his way in with, all the casting directors and talent agents and all that kind of stuff. And, it just really tried hard and just never was able to break through. And it's really tough as far as acting goes, especially right now there's no work. So that makes it extra tough. But even, back before all this, stuff with the strikes and stuff, it's really tough to get into. But being an extra is easy. That you sign up for the casting, list, and they just put you on an email list, and they were always looking for extras, and it's kind of easy. I still get emails for it, and it's something I do want to get back to someday, and I'm hoping to at some point. But obviously, it's been pretty quiet here recently, so not too many opportunities. Even though I'm not SAG Screen Actors Guild, so I could potentially work on stuff that's non-union, but it's not a lot of that stuff. And A Sylvia says, hey, Matt, sorry I'm late. How's the live show been? It's been great. You can see how everyone else thinks, but I think it's been pretty fun. And I see we are at 2 hours too. So try and catch up on the last few little member questions here that I can. And Marco says he'll stay in Apple's walled garden as well. And Matt, about your Apple, Google, it's all personal preference for sure. But Harris says Google has the Gmail, Google One, Photos, Docs, etc. Yeah, it's kind of the same thing. I'm so ingrained in the Apple thing. It's tough. Austin says I'm addicted to Vice Grip Garage. He's like an automotive Bob Ross. That's fun. I don't think I've actually heard of him. I'd have to check out the channel. Thanks for the recommendation. Dave says I almost bought an 84 Corolla GTS as my first car, but it had rusted rocker panels after only 6 years on the road. I bought the car next to it, the Chrysler Daytona Turbo. Still kicking myself. That's a bummer, but honestly, a Chrysler Daytona Turbo is really cool these days. I know back, not too long ago, they were still like not super impressive to a lot of people, but maybe it's just me. I have a soft spot for some of the American like rad stuff of the 80s. And I think that's how I'd be curious to hear what you thought about it, Dave. But I feel like that still could have been a fun first car for sure. But I mean, those A86s are, just blowing up in value, I'm sure. Harris says that Mark was the lead guitarist and band member for Dire Straits. Gotcha. Okay, and thanks for chiming in there, you truck as well. And he says, money for nothing, Sultans of Swing. I'm upset, Matt. Yeah, sorry, I'm out of the loop on Dire Straits. I don't think I actually have ever listened to Dire Straits. Apologies once again, but I'm not even sure what genre that is. Sorry. And somebody says, Matt, how's the cars and coffee scene around your area? It's good. It's very exotic focused in a lot of ways, which is cool. And it's nice. I think I go, once or twice a year. There's a lot of the same stuff. Every once in a while, there's something that surprises me, but it's one of those things where there's not a ton of variety as far as new cars. There's a good variety as far as price ranges and stuff. There is, some more affordable stuff and classic stuff. But to me, it's just like I've gone to so many cars and coffees that I'm kind of jaded, which is probably crappy to say, but it's just like I get more excited going to a classic car show because I'm an old soul and I don't see 50s cars on the road that often versus seeing, M3s and 911s or whatever. It's just, to me, a little less exciting, but it's a really cool cars and coffee scene. It's one of the more better managed ones, I think, where they very tightly control it so there isn't any burnouts and stupid behavior. And and it's a really nice atmosphere. It's a really nice, thing to go to. And, I'm glad that we have a good one nearby here. And I appreciate the background there, Harris, as far as Dire Straits goes. And Murphy says, thanks, Matt. I love these live streams. See you next week. Thanks for joining in. Harris says, yeah, I would recommend some of their songs. And yeah, kick-ass live stream again, man. Have a blessed week, everyone. Yeah, thanks for joining in, everyone, Harris especially, and all of the members and everyone else. Sorry I didn't get to all the non-member questions. There's always so many here. But like I always say, anyone else who has a question that they really want an answer to, feel free to send me a message on Facebook. That's the easiest way that I can interact with viewers. If you have a Facebook account, go to the Facebook page and send me a message there. And I always do a pretty good job, I'd say, of answering those messages there for anyone who's considering car shopping or just have any questions in general. I'm always happy to answer. Dave says the Daytona got him into fixing cars, had to rebuild the engine 3 times. First car is always great though, man. That's a lot of work, but glad it was fun still. And thanks everyone for the well wishes there and for joining in Trike Car Guy in Austin and everyone else. And B. Mitchell says, yeah, most cars and coffees have become victims of their own success. Very true. And all right. So yeah, thank you all very much for watching. Let me know your thoughts here on the live stream after it signs off here. It's always cool to hear some of the questions from some of you who don't chime in live, but I know a lot of people watch this after the fact. So I always enjoy seeing those comments as well. But yeah, anyway, thank you all very much for watching. Have a great week here this week. I got lots more great reviews coming. And like I said, stay tuned this fall in particular. I'm going to try and film more of those used performance modified vehicles, and should be a good time. Some more Bullitt videos here, hopefully, as well. And should be a good fall for those of you who like the performance cars, especially. But anyway, thank you all very much for watching the live stream here and joining in. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.